Chapter 2242. Celestia's cute porcelain doll face, her long hair casually hanging down to her waist, and her clear eyes filled with lust. Her watery eyes gently blinked as if they could release electricity. Not to mention others, even Dustless's heart was slightly stirred. Not bad. After muttering to himself for a while, Dustless nodded and smiled. Sometimes, pure admiration wasn't the same as lust. Not bad? This answer is really unsatisfactory. Celestia pursed her thin lips and puffed up her cheeks in anger. She asked in dissatisfaction, "Is it only not bad? Don't you think that's enough, you two? There are other people watching from the side. Don't treat us like air. If you want to have some alone time, wait until there's no one around." Unable to bear it any longer, Claire roared. She quickly walked over and forcefully pulled Dustless away. Shortly after, she placed her hands on her hips and pointed at Celestia while scolding, "Don't forget where we are right now. We're in public. There are also a few pairs of eyes watching." Ha! Hearing this, not only did Celestia not mind, she even smiled elegantly. Not to mention men, even Claire's heart palpitated. When she reacted, she felt ashamed of herself. Some things, aren't they only interesting when done in public? Celestia asked back with a light smile. She even gave Dustless, who was behind Claire, a big wink as she spoke with deep affection. "Even so, you still have to distinguish the occasion." Dustless smiled. No matter what, he had lived for a few hundred years. No matter how Celestia bewitched him, the effect on him was negligible or even non-existent. It could be ignored. Is this guy a block of wood? Or is he pretending to be reserved and embarrassed? Seeing Dustless being so uninterested, Celestia frowned. Although she still had a smile on her face, she was already gritting her teeth in her heart. How could this be? Am I so unattractive? In fact, Celestia was very confident in her looks. As long as she was determined to seduce others, not many people would be able to resist her. But Dustless was truly an exception this time, and it caused Celestia to feel an unprecedented sense of defeat, causing her to feel rather unwilling in her heart. If even Dustless could not seduce him, how could this guy lower his guard and kill him? Thinking of this, Celestia could not help but have a headache. Actually, it was not that Celestia was incompetent, but that he had chosen the wrong opponent this time. "Little girl, you want to fight with me? You'll tire yourself out." Dustless scrutinized Celestia from the corner of his eyes. In a trance, he seemed to have seen through her heart. His lips curled up slightly as he turned around and left. "It's getting late. Let's hurry up and deal with that military-grade strategic sprite. Maybe we'll be able to make it back in time for dinner." Around evening, Dustless and the others returned to the Elven Academy. On the way back they met Fianna, who was in a daze. When they met her, she had almost lost her mind. Dustless and the others had no choice but to bring her back. "You killed Godfeng Zhao?" In the dean's office, Grievous stared at Dustless with a livid expression and said angrily, "You promised me that you wouldn't find trouble with him. Why are you going back on your word now?" Grieva glared at Dustless angrily. If it wasn't for the difference in strength between them, she would have already slapped Dustless to death. Forget about this bastard provoking her 3 or 4 times. Now he even killed Godfeng Zhao. How could Grieva tolerate this? One had to understand that Godfeng Zhao's swordsmanship was taught by her. He could be considered half a disciple of Grieva's. Moreover, when she expelled Godfeng Zhao, it was to protect him in disguise. Who would have thought that he could not escape death in the end? There was such a thing, but... Dustless thought carefully and nodded lightly. Then he said, "But don't forget the 3 points of agreement from before. As long as that kid doesn't come looking for me, I will let him go. But, this time he ambushed me and wanted to kill me. Do I have to continue to abide by the agreement? He was courting death. What does it have to do with me?" Dustless's reply was sonorous and forceful. He was not afraid of Dean Grievous's identity at all. After all, strength determined everything. Although this woman had a high status, her strength was dozens of streets behind Dustless's. Forget it. What about that guy's corpse?" Grievous finally sighed faintly. She looked deeply at Dustless and asked helplessly, "You wouldn't go so far as to whip a corpse, right?" She buried it. Pointing at Fianna, who had been silent all this while, Dustless said frankly, "Also, I have completed the matter regarding the strategic level elf. If there's nothing else, I will go back and rest." "All right. Don't forget that you owe me a favor, old woman." Dustless turned his head and said the moment he stepped out of the door. "Hurry up and disappear." Grieva roared in disdain. If it were anyone else who dared to call her an old woman, she would definitely beat that brat up without even thinking about it. However, Dustless was an exception. That brat's strength had exceeded Griva's understanding. Blindly challenging him would only bring disgrace upon herself and gain nothing. The dead can't be revived. There are some things that you have to be more open-minded about. Looking at the despondent Fianna, Grievous could only sigh and persuade her. If she wanted to blame someone, she could only blame God Fengzhou for not being tactful and offending someone he should never offend. I know, Fianna nodded silently. Her eyes were still cloudy and full of confusion about the future. Her goal in coming to this school was to find God Fengzhou. Now that he was dead, where should she go in the future? P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2243. Gently examining Fianna, Grievous had a lot of words in her heart, but she didn't know how to say them. She couldn't possibly ask her to take revenge, right? Dustless's unfathomable strength was extremely powerful. Not to mention Fianna, even she didn't dare to act rashly. A person's life is very long. You will meet many people in your life that you have a good impression of. In the end, God Fengzhou was just one of them. God Fengzhou was indeed good, but he has become a thing of the past. You are very outstanding. You have to look to the future. When the time comes, your destined marriage will naturally appear. Grievous advised meaningfully. It was a fact that God Fengzhou had died. The dead had passed away. Those who were still alive had to look to the future. I understand, Madam Dean. Fianna nodded slightly and left without saying anything. It's best that you can look on the bright side. Grievous didn't stop her. Some psychological problems couldn't be resolved by others. The key was still herself. She could only hope that Fianna would walk out of the shadow by herself. Yo, beauty. Unexpectedly, as soon as Fianna left Grievous's office, she saw her lifelong enemy waving at her with a smile. Fianna stared at the person in front of her. The young figure reflected in her bright pupils was Dustless. You? Seeing Dustless walking over with a smile, Fianna just said coldly, trying to strike up a conversation when someone is at their saddest. It's better not to use this kind of boring method. It will only make people dislike you. Strike up a conversation? You're thinking the wrong way. Dustless shook his head and said righteously, I know you hate me, but there's something I have to say again. You're still my team's underling and I'm your boss. You have to listen to me. Fianna's eyes locked onto Dustless. She felt very conflicted. This was a good thing, but when it came out from this guy's mouth, it was like a mafia boss was about to gather his underlings for a fight. Just say what you want. Fianna was too lazy to bicker. She knew that she was far from being a match for Dustless. She would only be humiliating herself if she said too much. There's a competition recently. Although I'm not interested in participating, Alice and the others are forcing me to participate. It seems that the opponent is Alice's sister. They also want you to participate. After all, you're one of them. In the end, Dustless spread out his hands with a helpless expression. Aren't the few of you enough? To your team, everyone else is a burden. I think you alone can become the champion of the Fairy Sword Dance Festival. Fianna asked bluntly while looking at Dustless. I have no interest in participating in that kind of competition. Fame and fortune are like floating clouds to me. Dustless shook his head. His tone was calm and tranquil as he said, I'm just accompanying them for a little bit. In any case, I have nothing better to do. I didn't expect you to be so gentle. I always thought you were a cold-blooded animal. Fianna looked at Dustless in surprise. Her eyes were somewhat inexplicable. Don't look at me like that. Dustless touched his nose and saw that Fianna's eyes were shining like a mirror that had been wiped extremely bright. He was rather speechless and said, I am a person with principles. Sometimes, I really can't stand those people who pretend to be pretentious in front of me, so I can't help but beat them up. Who ask them to be weak and have no awareness at all. I hate those people who pretend to be powerful the most. If they want to annoy you, please forgive me. Sigh. This is an old problem. Sigh. Dustless made a forced and helpless expression. You're right. This time, Fianna didn't object to Dustless. Instead, she nodded in agreement. Fengzhou and Geo didn't have the strength, and they insisted on acting cool in front of Dustless. In the end, they were killed. They deserved it. After all, if you want to act cool and seek death, you have to look at who you're dealing with. It's good that you can understand me. Then what about this time? Dustless blinked his eyes in anticipation. The past is the past. People should look to the future. After a moment of silence, Fianna finally left these words. She didn't say anything else and left Dustless with her back facing him. Seems like she agreed. Dustless smiled. Looking to the future meant that the past was the past. There was no need to dwell on it. In other words, regarding Feng Zhao's death, Fianna didn't want to ask any more. Sure enough, being a bad person has its benefits. Dustless revealed a faint, thought-provoking smile. Sometimes it wasn't a good thing to be too open. There were a lot of restrictions when doing things and it was very inconvenient. On the contrary, the identity of a bad person was very suitable. Anyway, he was used to being thick-skinned. Dustless's dormitory. She agreed. Alice and the others looked at Dustless in surprise. They didn't expect Fianna to be so easy to talk to and really agree to Dustless. In fact, when they proposed this condition, they didn't have much hope. After all, they all knew about the relationship between Fianna and Feng Zhao. Feng Zhao had always been Fianna's lover. Now that he was killed by Dustless, she should hate him greatly. But she agreed so easily. The girls were really surprised and inconceivable. Once I set out, what can I do? Dustless asked calmly. It's normal for Fianna to agree. That Feng Zhao has long been beaten into a mental patient by me. He doesn't treat Fianna as gently as before. Instead, he used Fianna many times to threaten me and even wanted to kill her. Don't forget, if it weren't for me, that girl would have been killed. To be honest, I think Fianna should thank me. You're shameless enough. Claire and the others rolled their eyes. Only Dustless could say such deranged words without blushing or panting. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2244. It was Dustless who killed God Feng Zhao, causing Fianna to fall into the darkness of her life. After all, he was her dream lover, her spiritual pillar. It was fine if he was framed and killed by Dustless, but now Dustless actually shamelessly said that Fianna should thank him. Was there anything more shameless than this? This is the truth. Dustless glanced at the girls and calmly said, if it weren't for me, Fianna would still be pursuing that stinking brat. Now that she's free, shouldn't she thank me? Really? You? Claire and the others looked at each other and shook their heads. They didn't argue anymore. Anyway, they all knew how shameless Dustless was. Trying to reason with this guy was just asking to be humiliated. But then again, it's good that she can participate. We must win this competition. Linslet stroked her golden hair, her beautiful eyes filled with fighting spirit. Win the final victory? Alice also repeated. She was very different from her previous confident self. Her spirit was slightly confused and dispirited. After all, her opponent was her sister. You think it's impossible? Dustless looked at Alice lightly. Perhaps her sister, Versilia, was like a magic wand that couldn't be surpassed. Moreover, it was deeply rooted in her heart. Bang bang bang. At the same time, a dull knocking sound suddenly sounded. It was extremely loud, as if someone was kicking the door with all their strength. The explosive sound made Dustless frown. Could it be that chick Fianna? Seeing this scene, Wuxian slowly walked over. Just as he was about to open the door, a bang sound was heard. A hole was directly kicked in the door of his house. TSK, this is really arrogant. Dustless was still smiling mischievously, but a cold light flashed in his eyes. If he continued to remain silent after being slapped in the face, where would he put his face? Although Dustless sometimes disdained to fight with small characters, those clowns who liked to provoke him, especially those who did it with such great fanfare, couldn't be let go. However, the few people that came into view made Dustless frown deeply. Who are you? Looking at the unfamiliar faces in front of him, without exception, they were all unfamiliar women. Dustless wasn't familiar with them, and at the same time he didn't know them. They are my sister's followers, Alice said, a trace of worry flashing in her beautiful eyes. This is interesting. Dustless's eyes slightly narrowed. Although the girls in front of him were not bad, they were ignored by him. He sighed and said, I thought they were guests. They are other people's lackeys. What did you say? Say it again if you dare. Dustless's words were like the detonation of a super bomb. The girls glared at him angrily. Ever since they followed Versilia, they were respected wherever they went. Now this bastard Dustless actually called them lackeys. How dare he? Did I say something wrong? Although they were all beautiful girls, Dustless's words were merciless. He coldly mocked, if you are not lackeys, then what are you? Not to mention once, even if I say it 10,000 times, I will dare. If you piss me off, I will get a loudspeaker and broadcast it in this school every day. You. Hearing this, the girls were furious. Everyone's face was filled with anger. They had always been regarded as geniuses. When had they ever been slandered like this? Pay the price for your stupidity. The girls started fighting without saying anything, reaching for the weapons at their waists. All of you stop. At this moment, Alice suddenly stood in front of Dustless, preventing the situation from getting out of hand. Do you only know how to hide behind a girl? Versilia's followers were furious. If it weren't for Alice, they might have already beaten Dustless up. They would have beaten this brat up until his face was swollen. Sorry I am such a coward. Are you going to bite me? Dustless chuckled and mocked. I like to live off a woman. If you are not happy, tell Alice not to protect me. You cowardly man. Versilia's followers were furious. How could there be such a shameless man? Even though he was living off a woman, he still spoke so righteously and openly. Can't you be a little more normal? Alice turned her head and looked at Dustless helplessly. Then she looked at the girls and said coldly, Big sister asked you to come find me? Alice, go away. Don't protect this guy. A coward like him is not worth it. Versilia's subordinate didn't wait for Alice to finish her sentence and interrupted her, scolding Dustless for being useless. You have misunderstood. Looking at the girls calmly, Alice said calmly, This guy is very strong. Even Big Sister is not his match. Also, I am not standing between you to protect Dustless. Then what is it? Versilia's followers asked. It is to protect you from being hurt by this guy, Alice said softly. Alice said softly. After all, she had seen how terrifying Dustless was. If things went wrong, there might be a few more lives. Are you looking down on us? However, the girls were furious. They looked at Dustless, who was smiling cheekily. This guy was not only beautiful, but his skin was as white as snow. He looked very smart. He was a typical sissy and pretty boy. How could he have the demeanor of a strong warrior? Let's go. Bring me to see Big Sister. Alice shook her head. She was too lazy to talk nonsense with this group of people. They were too ignorant. Versilia is not looking for you. She is looking for this guy. Everyone looked at Dustless. Their eyes flashed with different meanings. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2245. Let's go. Bring me to Big Sister. Alice shook her head. She couldn't be bothered to waste her breath on this bunch of ignorant people. Lady Versilia didn't look for you. She's looking for this guy. Everyone turned to Dustless, their eyes glinting with a different meaning. Looking for me? At this moment, it wasn't just the others who were stunned, even Dustless was filled with bewilderment. He only knew very little information about Versilia. In short, this woman was powerful and extremely arrogant. She looked down on everyone, including her younger sister Alice. Of course, this was normal. All powerful people had their own pride. Young people all had their own personalities and tempers. Even though it was childish and laughable in Dustless's eyes, this was very rare and normal. Are you afraid? Seeing Dustless's frown as though he was afraid, Versilia's followers immediately sneered. A good-for-nothing who lives off a woman is indeed a good-for-nothing. You're really lucky to be summoned by Lady Versilia. I really don't know where you got your luck from. Regarding this, Wu Qin just laughed it off and treated it as a fart. He didn't even listen to it and said, Why did your boss summon me? Don't tell me she thinks I'm handsome and wants to have a one-night stand with me? I'm warning you, I'm not that kind of person. You can't sleep with me without paying. Hearing this, Alice spat out her saliva. Her face was covered in cold sweat. She subconsciously looked around and heaved a sigh of relief after seeing that her sister didn't appear. If she heard this, the consequences would be unimaginable. There would definitely be an earthquake. You better watch yourself. If you dare to talk to my sister like this, you'll definitely be chopped into pieces. Definitely. Alice warned in an extremely serious tone. Afraid that Dustless wouldn't believe her, Alice continued, My sister is very powerful, second only to the strongest sword dancer, sacrificial lotus Asubble. Don't spout nonsense. Offending her won't do you any good. Besides, I don't think she has any ill intentions towards you. The point is that I'm not spouting nonsense. I really think that your sister is plotting something against me. It's very possible that she slept with me without paying. Dustless had an aggrieved look on his face, but in his heart, he did not think much of it. That was because the strongest sword dance sacrificial lotus Asubble was the god of wind Zao, and unfortunately, that guy had already been played to death by him. Madman, madman, madman. You must be a madman. When Dustless said this, Versilia's followers were in an uproar. They stared at him dumbfounded. This hothead's brain must have been squashed by a door. He didn't even know how to spell the word death. If Versilia found out about this, someone would definitely die. In their opinion, the person who would be bleeding would definitely be dustless. In their eyes, Versilia was invincible. Now we'll give you a chance. Take back what you just said and kneel down and apologize sincerely. We can let bygones be bygones and forget about what happened just now. Versilia's followers looked unfriendly. If Alice hadn't stopped them, they wouldn't have minded swallowing Dustless alive. Kneel down and apologize? On account of your ignorance, I'll spare your lives. Dustless glanced at them indifferently and spat out a word with a face full of annoyance. Scram. What did you say? Versilia's followers were enraged. They were about to unsheathe their longswords. Why aren't you scramming? Do you need me to chase you away personally? When she saw that Wu Chen was really infuriated, Alice berated loudly as well. She knew that once Wu Chen was really infuriated, then the consequences would absolutely not be tolerated by this group of people, and it was even to the extent that her sister would be implicated. You. Versilia's followers were about to vomit blood. All along they had been in the limelight. Today they were humiliated by Dustless. The impact was especially huge and it left a psychological shadow in their hearts. Just wait and see. The few of them left ruthless words. They were so angry that their eyes turned red, and they retreated pathetically. If they continued to stay here, they would definitely continue to be humiliated. After all, girls were very thin-skinned. Really, there are more and more cats and dogs who like to bully others. Just looking at them makes me want to vomit. It's a pity that their good looks are going to be ruined. Dustless sighed faintly. Bullying others was human nature and it was hard to change. Sigh, don't you know that you have to look at the owner before beating a dog? Offending my sister won't do you any good. This is equivalent to making a strong enemy for no reason. Alice was full of worry and headache. Dustless was really too good at causing trouble. Some words that could be considered taboo should not be said, but this guy could say it in the most infuriating tone. Isn't this just right? Dustless smiled disapprovingly and said straightforwardly, Anyway, I still feel that my current life is too dull and boring. If your sister can bring me excitement, maybe I'll be kind and generous and let her be my maid. It's not impossible. You're really arrogant, aren't you? Hearing this sentence, even to an outsider like Alice, Dustless was asking for a beating at this moment. Moreover, her sister would definitely fly into a rage if she knew. Alice could even see Versilia's furious expression. Anyway, I don't care. In the next competition I will meet your sister. Since the battle is about to start, it's not a big deal for me to add fuel to the fire. Dustless was indescribably carefree. His words showed that he did not care about Versilia at all. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2246. You sure are relaxed, aren't you? Alice was speechless. Who was her sister? Other than Liena Subble, she was the most powerful person in Alicia Elf Academy and was admired by many. Her strength was self-evident, but now she was being treated like a joke by Dustless. Wasn't he courting death? He must be tired of living. I'm not afraid of your sister. On the contrary, I'm curious. Why is she looking for me? Dustless stroked his chin and said narcissistically, Could it be that she has taken a fancy to me and wants me to sleep with her? In your dreams. Alice rolled her eyes and glanced at Dustless in annoyance. Versilia suddenly finding trouble with Dustless spread like wildfire in a short time. After all, the former was a famous person in the academy, and Dustless was the only male elf envoy. Both of them received a lot of attention. Therefore, the moment the commotion broke out, it spread throughout the entire Alicia Elf Academy. That guy rejected her? In the luxurious dormitory, a cute and tall girl frowned. Her eyes were filled with surprise. She carefully looked at the few people, and the shock in her eyes could not be concealed. All along, not many people dared to go against him. They even avoided him as much as they could. Dustless was the first, breaking the exception that had been there for a long time. Tell me what that guy said. I'm quite interested, the girl said with a dignified voice. The young girl spoke softly, her tone dignified. The girls in front of her all nodded, their faces filled with respect. This person's appearance was similar to Alice's. The only difference was that she was more energetic than Alice. Her whole body was glowing with a powerful aura, and she gave off the feeling that she was not inferior to men. She was Alice's sister, Versilia. What? That guy really said that? Hearing her subordinates criticize Dustless's crimes, especially when Dustless said that he would not pay for sleeping with her, Versilia's beautiful eyes trembled slightly, and there was a hint of shock in them. Dustless's guts were not small. Dustless. Versilia murmured softly. Soon after, the corners of her mouth curled up with interest. I'd like to see where he gets the courage to slander me like this. At night, the sky gradually darkened and the temperature gradually dropped. Bang bang bang. Just as Dustless was about to go to sleep, the dull knocking sound came again. It was different from the sound of the door being kicked during the day. This time it was very gentle and rhythmic. The first impression he gave was that he was very polite. Who's trying to ambush us in the middle of the night? Dustless yawned. He was wearing pajamas and his hair was still wet. He opened the door in boredom and his face was full of laziness. Creak. The door was gently opened and a familiar yet blurry face entered. Who are you? Dustless asked. He was 100% sure that he had seen this face before, but he couldn't remember who it was. You don't know me? The visitor raised her eyebrows slightly, looking extremely surprised. After all, she was a public figure. Most of the people in this school knew her. What a joke. Are you famous? Why should I know you? Dustless grinned and said, there are so many narcissistic people nowadays. My name is Versilia, Alice's sister. The young girl's tone was calm. Her beautiful eyes stared straight at Dustless and she deliberately emphasized, I'm also the former leader of the Wind King Knights. So it's you. Dustless suddenly realized and laughed. You're the boss of those clowns during the day? You're not here to find trouble with me, are you? The boss of those clowns? Versilia's forehead darkened, and the corner of her mouth twitched. This was the first time someone called her the boss of those clowns. Wasn't he looking down on her? Forget it, I'm not going to argue with this country bumpkin. After taking a deep breath, Versilia's heart calmed down again. Just as she was about to speak, Dustless's sudden words almost made her go berserk. Let me tell you, little girl. Don't think that you can get a discount just because you took the initiative to find me. You can't afford to sleep with me. Even if you take out your entire family, you can't afford this price. Dustless's tone was very serious, and his eyes looked at Versilia sternly. You bastard. Versilia almost couldn't help but slap him. She finally understood that her subordinate was so angry that she almost cried. This guy was too shameless. He didn't have any integrity at all. Also, may I ask if you are really that expensive? What did he mean by I can't afford it even if I take out my entire family? Versilia was incomparably furious. Her entire body was about to combust. Not only did she feel that she was being looked down upon, even her own family was being looked down upon by Dustless. Kid, remember this clearly. I'm not here to talk nonsense. Also, you better shut up now. You'll definitely regret the price of angering me. Don't play with fire. Versilia resisted the urge to beat Dustless to death and said expressionlessly, I heard that you and Alice are very close. I'm just curious about what kind of man she likes. At the end of her sentence, Versilia's gaze was abnormally cold. She wanted to see through Dustless. Do you think that I'm ordinary and mediocre? Do you think I'm an idiot? Versilia stared at Dustless for half a minute and remained silent. It was Dustless who broke the silence first. You, Versilia's face stiffened. Frankly speaking, she couldn't see anything special about him. Other than being good-looking, he was just ordinary. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2247. Not only Anastasia but everyone else also thought that Dustless would definitely not be able to withstand this terrifying move. At the very least, he would be severely injured. After all, under such a terrifying move, everything in the world would be as fragile as paper. It was not that they were too weak, but that Reinhardt was too powerful. However, as the saying went, laymen look at the surface while experts look at the skill. This was referring to laymen like Amelia, who only saw the surface of things. This guy. What kind of freak is he? Julius stared at Dustless in the smoke and dust, cold sweat dripping down. He suddenly remembered what he had said before. If I'm serious, this world may come to an end. When I'm frivolous, you should have a sincere heart and thank me. This sentence was naturally said by Dustless. At first, when Julius heard it, he sneered at it, thinking that Dustless was arrogant and spoke without thinking. However, after seeing how terrifying Dustless was today, he remembered that this sentence was true. If he was serious, perhaps this world would really be finished. Compared to Dustless, the so-called Witch of Jealousy was too insignificant. Lady Anastasia, although it's very inappropriate to say this for the sake of your life, please be careful with your words and don't offend him. Julius looked at Anastasia, full of helplessness. What do you mean, Julius? Don't beat around the bush. Looking at Julius with a stern gaze, Anastasia's small mouth gently pouted, unusually unhappy. Is Wu Qin, that guy, seriously injured? With a look of expectation in her eyes, Anastasia said seriously, if that's the case, that's great. No, this guy is unharmed, nothing happened to him at all. Julius said very seriously, on the contrary, not only is he unharmed, this guy isn't even serious. To put it bluntly, if he thought about it just now, we might have all been killed in seconds. What? Anastasia asked in confusion. Dustless didn't attack us, so why would we be killed? In this world, some people might be born to stand at the end of the sky. They are unimaginably strong. Julius smiled bitterly and said indignantly, there's no need to deliberately attack us. I'm afraid that the aftermath of the battle would be enough to shatter us, and not even leave any remains of our corpses. It can't be that bad, right? Anastasia said doubtfully. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, a gust of wind swept across the horizon, blowing away the dust on the ground. Dustless's body also appeared. It was exactly as Julius had said. Dustless had gotten a blade of grass from somewhere in his mouth, and was holding it in his mouth lazily. Is that all? Reinhardt, you're really disappointing. That move of yours, Wang Su's flash, only brought out 1/10 of its power. Wu Qin looked at Reinhardt with a bored expression. His interest was waning. He ignored Reinhardt's ugly expression and said, is this the sword saint? It's really disappointing. It's so boring. This guy is too arrogant. There's a limit to how much he can look down on others. He said that he only brought out 1/10 of his power. If we were to have a worldwide bragging competition, Dustless would definitely sweep away all his opponents and become the unprecedented champion, Anastasia said disdainfully. Anastasia said with extreme disdain. Due to the previous duel with Julius, he had easily defeated her knight, causing Anastasia to lose face. Thus, she was extremely displeased with Dustless. She would not let go of any opportunity to snipe Dustless. For example, she had taken in Kai Yuezwa because she felt that the two of them had a grudge, so she replaced him. Lady Anastasia, I have to tell you that Dustless's words are not exaggerated. On the contrary, he's being humble. Glancing at the sky, Julius had goosebumps all over his body. He shuddered and even his soul trembled. Julius, don't slander yourself because of someone else's prestige. Dustless is not that powerful. What do you mean by if he didn't deliberately suppress it, the aftermath of the battle could have wiped us out? This kind of joke is really boring. Anastasia groaned, full of resentment. Haven't you noticed it yet? Julius sighed faintly and pointed at the sky. You'll know when you look at the sky. What's there to see in the sky? Isn't it just... What's going on? The disdain on Anastasia's face turned into endless fear and astonishment. Why did the sky become like this? Anastasia's scream attracted everyone's attention. Everyone raised their heads to look at the sky in astonishment and stupefaction. What's going on? Who did it? They actually pierced through the sky. This shouldn't have been done by that fellow Wu Qin, right? Are you kidding me? Is this something a human can do? Where did this guy come from? Everyone was stunned. They looked up at the sky. The sky within a radius of tens of kilometers had been completely shattered. It was pitch black and dead silent. The originally blue sky had turned into oppressive dark clouds. They could see the Milky Way in the depths of the universe. It was as if the dark abyss was connected to the vast universe. Gulp. Anastasia looked at Dustless in panic. Her soul trembled. That quiet appearance made it seem as if he had done something insignificant. Do you understand now? Julius smiled bitterly. Dustless shot that move into the sky. Once the energy exploded on land, the area within a radius of tens of kilometers would be affected. Do you think we can still survive? If he wanted to kill us, he could have used the aftershocks to crush us into nothingness. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus more, 3,000 rewards plus more, 1,000 comments plus more, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more. Chapter 2248. Crushed into nothingness by the shockwaves? Hearing this, Anastasia immediately shuddered, and the way she looked at Dustless changed drastically. There was less disdain and disapproval and more respect and respect. In the face of an expert, especially a heaven-defying character like Dustless, no one dared to be impudent. What should I do now? Anastasia was extremely conflicted. She suddenly felt that she was in a dilemma. If she wanted the throne, she had to be invincible against someone like Dustless. She didn't think that she had the life to contend against Dustless. She was unwilling to give up, but if she didn't give up, she would have to be enemies with Dustless. Such a difficult choice was truly frustrating. Cursius, this guy, is really smart. Anastasia couldn't help but look at Cursius, who was also dumbfounded, and she couldn't help but feel a little jealous. If she had seen the opportunity in advance and adopted the marriage strategy, she wouldn't be in such a passive position now. Now she was somewhat envious of Dustless's strength. Sure enough, the marriage strategy was right. It doesn't matter even if it's a little inconvenient. Cursius beamed, his mood suddenly brightening. Looking at the shattered sky, the terrifying black hole that was dozens of kilometers in size devoured the world, as if it would dismember and devour everything that came close. Everyone who saw this felt their hearts tremble. At first, before Dustless had displayed his strength, Cursius had felt wronged by the marriage, thinking that he had gotten the better end of the deal. But now, looking at this terrifying strength that could shatter heaven and earth with a snap of his fingers, it could even be said that even if he really became the king, a single word from Dustless could topple that king. In the face of absolute strength, everything was too fragile. Swish, swish, swish. At the same time, a sharp light flashed over the plains and swooped down with extreme speed. In the blink of an eye, it was infinitely close to Dustless. There was no doubt that this person was Reinhardt. The great sword in his hand was aimed at Dustless and slashed down. Boom, boom, boom. The huge slash whizzed out once again. It was even more ferocious and powerful than before. The destructive light was permeated with a biting cold aura that made one's hair stand on end. Obviously, Reinhardt also knew how powerful Dustless was, so he used all his strength to fight to the end. At the same time, Dustless's strength also aroused Reinhardt's competitive spirit. After all, for many years, there was almost no one who could compete with Reinhardt. Petty tricks. In the face of such an earth-shattering golden giant slash, even the sky was cut open by it. The magic power went berserk, and the mountains shook as if an earthquake was coming. However, Dustless remained motionless as if he was floating as a feather. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Dustless's palm suddenly emitted a huge ray of light. Although it was small in size, it was extremely dazzling, just like the sun rising in the darkness, extremely dazzling. Dowbreaker 88, Flying Dragon strikes the thief. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. With a flick of his finger, a thick ray of light cut through the sky. The sharp whistling sound that came from the air was like the soft cries of thousands of birds. It was frightening. Gulp. At this moment, everyone swallowed their saliva and held their breath. They stared at the sky and the two powerful attacks that were about to collide. Boom, boom, boom. The moment the two collided, the space within a radius of dozens of miles trembled violently. In the area closer to the center of the battle, the sky was like a mirror, with dense cracks appearing. It was as if a strong wind would completely collapse. Are they going to cancel each other out? Julius was also shocked. It was the first time in his life that he had seen such an intense battle. He looked up and saw two rays of light clashing in the sky, neither giving way to the other. No one could do anything to the other. Cancel each other out? In other words, it's a draw? Then I'm really sorry. Dustless shook his head and said in a cold tone, "In my dictionary of life, there is no draw. My enemies usually sleep forever. Ka ka ka." Dustless's words were really effective. The moment his voice fell, one of the two rays of light that were fiercely colliding could no longer hold on. Circles of cracks appeared on its brightly colored surface. As the collision continued, the cracks grew bigger and bigger, gradually spreading all over its body. Oh no. Seeing this, Reinhardt was shocked. He did not expect that his ultimate move would be the first to fail. It was crushed by Dustless's attack, and it was defeated so easily. Bang, bang, bang. Accompanied by a crisp explosion, the powerful slash that clashed with the sky-shaking thunder cannon was unable to withstand the ferocious attack. It vanished into thin air and was forcefully pulverized. Swish, swish, swish. After destroying Reinhardt's attack, the huge beam of light did not lose its momentum. It tore through the vast sky like a meteor and smashed straight at Reinhardt. Damn it. In the face of such a ferocious attack, Reinhardt cursed loudly. He gripped the hilt of his sword tightly with both hands and looked at the beam of light in front of him solemnly. He raised the dragon sword high and slashed down fiercely. Boom, boom, boom. A huge slash swept out and collided head-on with the incoming beam of light. An endless shockwave erupted, and Reinhardt, who was caught off guard, was sent flying several hundred meters away. His internal organs were trembling and almost dislocated, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Lost. Reinhardt lost. He lost everything. Julius shook his head gloomily. Although Reinhardt did not fall, things had developed to this point. He had already lost. Bang, bang, bang. Dense cracks had already appeared in the sky that had been destroyed earlier. This time, the clash between the two of them erupted with endless destructive shockwaves that completely shattered the sky. The blue sky shattered again, revealing the unfathomable dark universe in the void. The endless stars were clearly visible, shining and filled with the most mysterious luster. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2249. Reinhardt's expression was extremely interesting. Not to mention the alternating between green and white, there was also endless weakness. That move just now was really too terrifying and powerful. To put it bluntly, if it wasn't for the fact that the power of Flying Dragon Strike's thief had been unlimitedly weakened by a lot, he would have died without a doubt if he had taken that attack head-on. Dustless, this guy is really strong. Everyone looked at Dustless in shock. This guy was completely beating up Reinhardt. The two of them were not at the same level at all. No, it would be more appropriate to say that they were not in the same dimension at all. Am I going to admit defeat just like that? Reinhardt's eyes flashed with deep frustration. Dustless's strength was beyond his imagination. He was almost completely suppressed by Dustless. He didn't even have the slightest strength to fight back and was mercilessly beaten up violently. He even almost died just now, but he was not willing to give up. Come on Dustless, Reinhardt is leaking oil, beat him to death. Cheers to encourage Dustless suddenly rang out. Everyone looked towards the source and saw that it was Ferret, whom Reinhardt supported. This guy, Reinhardt wanted to cry but had no tears. He looked at Ferret with extreme anger and cursed in his heart. I worked so hard to help you seize the throne, and you actually support the enemy? Dustless had given him a big blow, but Ferret at this moment had given Reinhardt a heavy blow in his heart. The gap is too big, you should give up. Dustless's voice suddenly came. If you continue to fight, you may not just be injured. Reinhardt was already injured. If he continued to fight, the consequences were self-evident. That won't do. In the end, Reinhardt shook his head and said righteously, countless knights have died in battle, but have you ever seen a knight escape? The price may be your life. Dustless shook his head and said, in the beginning your starting point is wrong. Ferret is not suitable to be king, and she has no interest in participating. She has been used to being free since she was young, and to her, being king is not a good job. Instead, it will restrain Ferret. Maybe. After a moment of silence, Reinhardt nodded and said, however, you've heard of the saying, there's no turning back once you've shot an arrow. Since I've embarked on this path, there's no reason to turn back so easily. Besides, there's no turning back for me. There's no point in talking to each other. Bring out your full strength. Dustless didn't waste his breath. Knights were stubborn. In their eyes, dignity was more important than life. Even if they died, they wouldn't give up easily. Then I'll let you have a taste of my strongest attack. Reinhardt didn't waste any more time. He gripped the dragon sword tightly with both hands, and a terrifying force spread out, shooting straight into the sky. Boom boom boom. The supreme momentum shot into the sky and shook the earth. Since it was the last attack, Reinhardt naturally wouldn't show any mercy. He brought out the strongest technique in his life. As the saying goes, when immortals fight, mortals suffer. The current situation was just like that. With Reinhardt's full-strength eruption, the people around him who had nothing to do with him were in big trouble. Damn it, do you feel uncomfortable? Get out of here. I can't breathe. The expressions of Amelia and the others who were spectating the battle, as well as the other King's Choice candidates, changed drastically. Reinhardt's heaven-defying level was beyond their imagination. Not only had he extracted the mana in the atmosphere, but even the air had been sucked away. Several people felt the danger of suffocating. Look, what's that? Someone exclaimed and looked up, only to see a large amount of mana gathering above Reinhardt's head and gradually compressing it. Eventually, it turned into a huge sword that was dozens of meters long. This huge and tough sword was golden in color. It looked like Reinhardt's sword, the dragon sword, but closer to an enlarged version. An ancient sense of oppression slowly overflowed. Everyone retreat with me. Julius took a deep look at Reinhardt, knowing that this guy was going to go all out. He quickly yelled at everyone to leave. They might also be affected. That's more like it. Just now it was just a small fight. Noticing the sharpness of the giant sword, Wu Qin just smiled and passed it by. Then I'll also be a little serious. Wu Qin's smiling expression suddenly disappeared, and his eyes rotated gently. At this moment, the dark pupils disappeared and were replaced by the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan with a 5-pointed star. Blast him to pieces. Reinhardt shouted loudly, and the golden sword above his head fell from the sky, covered with terrifying magic fluctuations, as if it was going to split the whole world. Just a toy that can't withstand a single blow. Staring at the falling sword, Dustless closed his eyes in boredom and murmured softly, "In front of my Kansusanu, any destructive attack is just a foil to Kansusanu's power." The moment his voice fell, Dustless suddenly opened his eyes, and the chakra in his body erupted, and the materialized monster soared into the sky. Boom! The sky suddenly trembled. Looking up, the falling golden sword was caught by a huge shadow, and a thick arm held it tightly. What kind of monster is that? Reinhardt looked up at the sky, stupefied. However, this was not the most surprising thing. Ka. Susanu's sturdy arm tightened, and immediately exerted a little force, and the golden greatsword that was tightly grasped was unexpectedly crushed. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2250. Versilia's beautiful face was covered in a layer of haze when she heard this, and she was extremely vexed in her heart. Earlier she thought that she would definitely win. After all, no matter who it was, they would definitely die after being struck by her sword. But who would have imagined that Dustless was a complete freak and was completely fine after receiving her sword strike head-on? In other words, if she couldn't kill Dustless, it meant that Versilia had lost. Naturally, she had to fulfill her promise as the loser and serve Dustless to sleep. "Big sister, are you okay?" Alice looked at Versilia with some fear. She was sure that Versilia was on the verge of exploding at any moment. "Dustless, you better stop before you go too far." Alice moved to Dustless's side and grabbed the corner of his shirt. Her face was red as she said, "You actually want to sleep with Big Sister. You are very ambitious. However, do you want to sleep with a bomb that could explode at any moment? No, it should be 2 bombs. If you dare do that, Claire will definitely not let you off." Isn't that more interesting? Dustless didn't mind. Instead, he was very interested. "I have never experienced sleeping with a bomb in my life. It sounds quite exciting." Exciting? Alice's pretty face twitched and she was speechless. Sleeping beside a bomb that could blow her into smithereens at any moment, anyone would feel fear and dread. This fellow actually said that it was exciting. This really refreshed Alice's understanding of the world. "That's enough, Alice." After a while, Versilia waved her hand and said in a carefree tone, "Since I have lost, I will fulfill my promise. Isn't it just sleeping with you? I will agree to it." Alice didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She knew that this was like dry wood meeting fire. She couldn't stop it even if she wanted to. "Big sister, you are on your own." After taking a deep look at Versilia, Alice turned and left to patrol the other areas of the academy. Sleeping with... Actually, the reason why Alice had stopped Versilia was because she was rather unhappy. In the past, she had always been competing with Claire and Linslet. Now that her elder sister had suddenly joined in, Alice really felt a headache coming on and was caught unprepared. Forget it. Let's take it one step at a time. Alice, who couldn't figure it out, didn't dwell on it any longer. Things would cross that bridge when they came to it. Sometimes she should just let nature take its course. TSK. Come in. Pointing inside the room, Dustless smiled and said, "When we're sleeping tonight, don't touch me or I'll throw you out." Versilia lowered her head when she heard this. She did not look at Dustless. She knew that this guy was invincible when it came to bickering. Arguing with him would only be asking for humiliation. Surprisingly clean. Walking into Dustless's bedroom, Versilia was stunned. It wasn't particularly luxurious, but it was very clean. The various decorations were very orderly and looked very natural. At first glance, it gave her a feeling of being dazzled. "It's rare to see a man as clean as you." Versilia took the initiative to say something to Dustless and immediately shut her mouth. "That's for sure. Didn't I say before that I'm a clean freak?" Dustless smiled naturally and said with a naughty smile, "Okay, now take off your clothes. Remember, take them off completely. It would be a tragedy if the smell of your clothes spread to me. I'm afraid of getting sick." Hearing this, Versilia, who couldn't take it anymore, had veins popping out on her forehead. "You're the one who's sick. You bastard, why don't you go?" Versilia stopped herself and tactfully kept her mouth shut. No matter how much she scolded, she would be the one at a disadvantage in the end. Moreover, Dustless might even deliberately take revenge on her. That would be a tragedy. "Just you wait. When it's time for the competition, I'll return the humiliation you gave me today in double." Versilia bit her tongue lightly. The pain cleared her mind a little. Finally, under Dustless's gaze, she took off all her clothes. She did not leave anything behind, and her impeccable figure was exposed right before his eyes. Versilia's body wasn't the hot type. In Dustless's eyes, her cleavage was like an airport. It was too flat. However, Versilia's skin was as white as snow. Every inch of her skin was as white as milk. Under the light, it was so dazzling that Dustless felt a little dizzy. Not bad. When you grow up in the future, you'll develop slowly. Dustless nodded slowly. His tone was very casual, and his shifty eyes looked very experienced. Stinky pervert, just you wait. Versilia's face was so red that blood could drip out. She secretly swore in her heart that one day in the future, when Dustless falls into her hands, she would make this guy regret living in this world. I know you're thinking of how to take revenge on me. Dustless carefully observed Versilia's eyes. He saw the almost tangible flames of anger, but he didn't care. In the end, he slowly smiled and said, "That's why I'm going to torture you even more now. I'll leave you with a cruel shadow that you'll never forget. This way you can work hard, turn humiliation into motivation, improve your strength, and take revenge on me in the future. Quickly thank me for my greatness, little girl." You, hearing that, Versilia's stomach was about to explode. This guy was too shameless. Even when he was molesting someone, he could say a bunch of great truths that made people speechless. The most deranged thing was that Wuxian wanted to sleep with her, and he still wanted Versilia to thank him. His shamelessness had reached the acme of perfection. Versilia really wanted to ask him how exactly did he train himself to be this shameless? P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2251. No matter what, Kaiwa Subaru would not bury the hatchet with Dustless. They had to fight to the death. The biggest contradiction was that Kaiwa Subaru did not think that Dustless would give Emilia to him. Therefore they were destined to be enemies. Kaiwa Subaru would not let Emilia go easily. She must be his dream girl. That's enough. Go back. From now on, Emilia is the king. Wu Chen's voice was very light as he looked at everyone. His voice was mixed in with the wind and sand, so much so that no one could hear him. But this weak voice was like the command of God to everyone. No one dared to refuse. Everyone nodded and looked at Dustless with respect and fear. Even if it was a high and mighty king in front of Wu Chen, it was just a matter of a kick. No matter what world, what society, the one who had the final say was always the one with the biggest fist. Humph. But no matter what, there were always exceptions. For example, at this moment, someone snorted. Of course, this person was not targeting Emilia but Dustless. "You little brat, if you don't beat me for 3 days you will go to the roof and tear down the tiles. Are you made of steel? If you don't slap me I'll beat you up." Wu Chen rolled his eyes and appeared in front of Kaiwa Subaru in a flash. "What do you want?" Seeing Dustless looking at him with a smile, Kaiwa Subaru was inexplicably nervous. He trembled under that gaze and could not help but feel disgusted. "Idiot, I told you before but you didn't listen. You deserve it." Julius simply closed his eyes. Out of sight, out of mind. He had always despised idiots like Kaiwa Subaru. He knew that he was no match for Dustless, but he still blindly challenged him. Wasn't he looking for death? "Do you still need to ask me? Of course I'm going to beat you." Dustless didn't talk nonsense. He directly grabbed Kaiwa Subaru's head, as if he was carrying a plastic bag. He grabbed Kaiwa Subaru very casually and said with a smile, "You mean should I cut your face dozens of times? Or should I just cripple you and make you unable to be a man?" No matter what, it was useless to kill Kaiwa Subaru. This guy would resurrect. You bastard, don't act rashly." Hearing this, Katsuki Subaru's face turned green instantly. She looked at Dustless as if she had seen a ghost. She said in a flattering tone, "Anyway, we used to be in the same camp and have the friendship of fellow disciples. Are we from the same sect?" Dustless couldn't help but laugh. The smile on his face deepened. "I thought I was shameless and thick-skinned enough. But after meeting you, I realized that I'm not even worth mentioning. I should call you Pleiades." "Hey, let's talk nicely." Katsuki Subaru smiled flatteringly and winked at Dustless. Dustless was about to swallow her. "You can avoid death but you can't escape punishment. How can I let you go without teaching you a lesson?" Dustless's face suddenly turned cold. "Also, I hate traitors the most in my life. I can't change this bad habit of mine." Boom boom boom. Dustless launched an attack as soon as he finished speaking. His big hand suddenly pressed down on the ground and smashed Katsuki Subaru to the ground. Blood immediately spurted out of his mouth. You bastard. Katsuki Subaru was furious. She glared at Dustless. When she was about to curse him, a series of big feet fell from the sky and landed on her face. Who asked you to go against me? You're courting death. Who asked you to think that you can compete with me with a trash skill? Who asked you to be a traitor? Every time he roared, a red footprint would be left on Kaiwa Subaru's face. In less than a minute, Kaiwa Subaru's face had swelled up and became as red as his thick buttocks. At that time, there were crimson footprints all over his face. What was worse was that no one stopped Dustless. Everyone turned a blind eye. First, everyone was afraid of Dustless's strength. Second, Katsuki Subaru deserved to be beaten. He knew that he was no match for Dustless, but he kept provoking him. He deserved to be beaten. That's enough, Dustless. That's enough. Amelia couldn't stand it anymore and pulled Dustless away. If he really killed Katsuki Subaru, it would be terrible. She didn't want Dustless to be known as a murderer. This kid. Can he really change the world? What an idiot. What an incompetent piece of trash. Can such a person really fulfill my dreams? Roswald looked gloomy and looked at Katsuki Subaru in despair. He knew that this guy was from another world, and he also got the hint of the future from the gospel. The general content was that Katsuki Subaru could change the world. But this cowardly look really made Roswald desperate. Forget it, let's take one step at a time. Maybe it's not that Katsuki Subaru is useless, but Dustless is too evil. Roswald comforted himself. He was also deeply helpless about this. He went to Katsuki Subaru and released a healing magic. No matter what happened to Katsuki Subaru in the end, for Roswald, a small healing magic was nothing, and if this guy really rose in the future, maybe he would be very grateful for his kindness. Everyone go back. Tomorrow we will go to the palace together. You can witness the coronation of the new king together. Dustless rubbed Amelia's head and smiled slightly. Goodbye. Everyone looked at each other and left reluctantly. Even if they were unhappy, they couldn't do anything about it. Dustless was too strong. Even if everyone joined forces, they still wouldn't be able to defeat this guy. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2252. Versilia wanted to cry, but no tears came out. At the same time, she hated Dustless even more. If this guy hadn't angered her, how could she have done such a rude thing? So everything started with Dustless. It was all Dustless's fault. Just wait and see. Before leaving, Versilia didn't forget to glare deeply at Dustless. She wanted to remember this hateful face forever and take revenge in the future. Still not giving up? Dustless could only sigh. This woman's brain was made of elm wood. Even now, she still wanted to take revenge on him without any signs of regret. The next morning, as soon as the sun rose, an uninvited guest came. Bang bang bang. Hurry up and open the door or I'll kick it down. Perverted beast Charcoal. The sound of someone knocking on the door came from outside the bedroom. At first, Dustless didn't know who it was, but after hearing the familiar words, perverted beast and charcoal, he was immediately sure that it was Claire. Really looking for trouble so early in the morning? Is it because of that chick from yesterday? Dustless lazily crawled out from under the blankets, his face showing a hint of confusion. Who asked Claire to be known for being a jealous lover? What's the matter so early in the morning? Sure enough, as soon as he opened the door, Claire glared at him furiously. Dustless felt like his body was about to ignite from being stared at by that fiery gaze. Where's that stray cat that stole a fish? Who would have thought that Claire wouldn't even look at Dustless and directly barged in? Moreover, she searched through Dustless's memories and searched for the others. She was most likely looking for Versilia. Strange, I clearly heard Alice say, no need to look for her. I chased her away last night. I only wanted to teach that chick a lesson. Dustless explained, if you use this doubt in your studies, then your strength will definitely improve by leaps and bounds. None of your business. Claire's hair stood on end. She looked at Shameless unkindly and warned fiercely, if you dare to flirt with other women again, I'll chop off your manhood. After saying this, Claire intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Dustless's most important place as a man. Who taught you all this? Dustless's old face darkened, and his body involuntarily trembled. Claire didn't understand this mess, so someone must have taught her. Headmistress Gruas, Claire said without hesitation, not realizing that she had betrayed Gruas. As expected, it's that old woman. Only she could come up with such a sinister idea. Dustless nodded slightly. He was not surprised and asked, cut the crap. Why are you looking for me so early in the morning? You forgot something so important? Pouting, Claire was extremely dissatisfied. She shouted, "In a few days we'll be fighting with your little lover. Of course we have to train faster. After all, that guy is very strong." Little lover? Hearing this, Dustless froze at first, then said speechlessly, "You mean Versilia? There's really nothing going on between me and that guy." "Who are you trying to fool? Even Alice doesn't believe that you're innocent." Claire snorted, then scolded, "Why are you still standing there like a fool?" After saying this, Claire hurriedly left, leaving Dustless alone to change his clothes. "I'm really getting worse and worse. Even a little girl dares to scold me," Dustless ridiculed in his heart. He was too lazy to lower himself to Claire's level. In the end, she was just a little girl. It wasn't worth making a big fuss. About 15 minutes later, Dustless finally arrived. Linslet, Claire and Alice had been waiting for a long time. In addition, Princess Fianna was also there. Although Dustless killed God Fengzhou, Fianna also understood that some things could not be blamed on Dustless. In the end, it was God Fengzhou's fault. He deserved to be killed. No matter who it was impossible to let go of an enemy who hated you. "Good morning, everyone," Dustless greeted with a smile. "It's still early? The sun is already shining on your butt." Linslet's seductive eyes were like silk, and her tone was full of jealousy. She deliberately said loudly, "I'm afraid last night was a wet dream, right?" Humph. It would have been better if she didn't say it. These words immediately attracted the firepower of the girls. Everyone snorted coldly. "Go train." Dustless was too lazy to refute. If he didn't do anything wrong, he wouldn't be afraid of ghosts knocking on his door. Anyway, there was nothing wrong, so why bother explaining? Let them imagine it. Big Sister will definitely not let you go. Along the way, the few of them chatted as they walked. Alice looked at Dustless and discontentedly advised, "You even dared to have designs on Elder Sister. Back then she only lost to the strongest elf envoy, Liena Subble. She's very strong." "Why is it Liena Subble everywhere? I can tell you clearly that scum is already dead." Dustless impatiently explained. "Wasn't God Fengzhou that Liena Subble? He had already been killed by him. It was just that no one knew." "Serves you right." Fianna glanced at Dustless with schadenfreude. She was the only one who knew the truth. "Don't worry, I definitely won't let Big Sister hurt you." Seeing Dustless's gloomy face, Alice softly comforted him. "I'm really flattered to have you protect me." Dustless only laughed dryly and did not refute. After all, this was Alice's good intention. "Yo, that trash who likes to live off a woman is here?" At this moment, an extremely discordant and sarcastic voice sounded. The few of them frowned. "P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2253. Hearing this, the group of nobles and ministers looked at Dustless with displeasure. They were inwardly furious. This fellow spoke carelessly and didn't put these high and mighty figures in his eyes at all. He even treated them as his underlings and ordered them around at will. He was simply abominable and too presumptuous. "What? Did you not hear what I said? Do you need me to repeat it?" Dustless's expression turned cold as he sighed inwardly. "Dustless, what's wrong with you all of a sudden?" Amelia approached Dustless and tugged at his sleeve, her tone puzzled. Usually, Dustless rarely spoke on occasions like this. He was too lazy to pay attention to this group of people and disdained to talk to them. However, at this moment, it was as if he had eaten gunpowder. His tone was extremely unfriendly, as if he was deliberately provoking this group of aristocrats. "You still can't tell?" Dustless's eyes turned cold like two blades. "These rotten fellows are hemming and hawing. Clearly they don't want to give the throne to you. They must have other plans. My mouth is really stinky. What I said yesterday really came true." Amelia raised her head and quietly sized up this group of nobles. Although they were all silent, their gazes were filled with disgust and displeasure. There was even a trace of undetectable killing intent. Letting someone who looks like the Witch of Jealousy become king is simply insane. I will never allow it. Me too. What a joke. Does she think that Amelia can become king if everyone else gives up? Stop dreaming. Even if all the other candidates for the throne are dead, I will not agree to her taking the throne. Everyone is right. Amelia is exactly the same as the Witch of Jealousy. If this kind of person becomes king, it will definitely cause chaos. Who knows, there might even be a rebellion. This will shake the foundation of the kingdom. Still want to be king? This kind of person might be the reincarnation of the Witch of Jealousy. In my opinion, she should be burned at the stake. After a moment of silence, the oppressive atmosphere finally exploded. Everyone couldn't take it anymore, and they all looked at Amelia with disgust. If looks could kill, perhaps Amelia would have been turned into minced meat by now. These self-proclaimed nobles and gentlemanly ministers all spouted all sorts of vicious words. You guys don't know what's good for you. Hearing that, Dustless erupted with a monstrous aura of viciousness. Endless killing intent swept out like a tidal wave. Poof, 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 poof. Under this terrifying aura, the faces of all the nobles present changed drastically. They were shaken by the powerful aura and spat out blood. Their internal organs were about to shatter, and their bodies were trembling. Everyone looked at Dustless in panic. They saw that his eyes were red and his face was covered with a layer of frost. There was a devilish smile on his lips. You want to go back on your word? That's fine, but I can also do whatever I want according to my will. Since you guys broke the rules of the game, it doesn't matter if I start a massacre. Wu Qin sneered. His eyes were crimson red, and a devilish arrogant smile hung on the corners of his mouth. Soon, I'll let all of you see how kind and cute the Witch of Jealousy is compared to me. The Witch of Jealousy is kind and cute? Hearing that, everyone was speechless. The Witch of Jealousy almost devoured the world 400 years ago. How could such a person be associated with kindness and cuteness? Knights, quickly suppress this traitor and that damned witch Amelia, Poochie. Before this minister could finish his words, Dustless blinked his eyes. The scarlet eye power went berserk, and a black, ominous flame suddenly descended and devoured him at the fastest speed. Help, quickly put out the fire. The minister suddenly screamed. Several colleagues around him were shocked and quickly went to put out the fire. However, before they could touch the minister, the black flame spread by itself and burned the minister who rushed to put out the fire. Damn it, what's going on? Quickly come and save me. Damn it, what kind of flame is this? Why can't it be extinguished? The ministers screamed in pain. Their words were full of endless pain. The cruelest way to die is to be burned alive. That kind of severe pain is unimaginable. This is Amaterasu, one of my dojutsu. I advise you not to act rashly. Otherwise these moving flames may lock onto you next. Wu Qin spoke with fervor and assurance. His smile was so splendid and gentle, but everyone present felt a chill run down their spine. Rebellion, rebellion, knights, quickly suppress this traitor for me. Many people were very stubborn and immediately ordered the knights to suppress Dustless. Clang, clang, clang. Countless sharp swords came out of their sheaths and surrounded Dustless and his party at lightning speed. Everyone's expression was full of hostility. Let go, Dustless. Julius and Reinhardt stood in front of Dustless and looked at him vigilantly. Both of them were sweating. They knew that Dustless was powerful, but they were helpless. In the end, they blamed this group of nobles for being too insidious and deliberately making things difficult for Amelia. Ah, what a joke, Reinhardt and Julius. You two defeated foes still want to stop me? That's too naive. Dustless laughed contemptuously. Then a terrifying energy halo erupted. Feeling Dustless like a volcanic eruption, everyone's face changed dramatically. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2254. The impact of these words on Versilia was no less than being struck by lightning. Her head was buzzing non-stop and she felt dizzy. She clenched her fists tightly and stared at Dustless. Her piercing gaze made people not dare to look at her. It was as if she could see through a person's heart. Now that things have come to this, are you still going to pretend, little girl? Dustless stared at Versilia and suddenly thought of something. He smiled and said, looks like that Liena Subble has traumatized you. Hearing this, Versilia only snorted and said expressionlessly, spell engraving? What is that? I don't understand. Versilia was stubborn. Obviously she did not plan to confess. Yo, you are quite stubborn. Dustless was too lazy to ask more and continued, but I have to remind you that the divine aura you released yesterday was very strong. Anyone with a little knowledge would be able to see where the problem lies. Is that so? Hearing this, Versilia was stunned. After being attacked by Dustless yesterday, she finally released her divine aura out of anger. She did not expect Dustless to see the problem. This guy is actually so observant. From the level of my divine aura, he can see if I have implanted the spell engraving. Versilia's heart was silent. Dustless looked sloppy, but he was actually very smart. She did not expect him to see the flaw in such a simple moment. I have something to remind you. Putting down the teacup in his hand, Dustless's face revealed a rare serious expression. Say it. Versilia opened her mouth. Although her tone was still cold, she finally had a different opinion of Dustless. He was a talent. You know your place. Dustless smiled faintly. Although Versilia's tone was very cold, when it fell into his ears, it was a request for help. Perhaps Versilia was aware of the danger of the incantation engraving, so she asked Dustless for help. She just didn't want to lose face. My shoulder suddenly feels a little sore. What should I do? Dustless smiled and looked at Versilia with a teasing expression. His watery eyes stared at her pretty face. His meaning was self-evident. This bastard is doing this again. Seeing this, Versilia's mouth twitched a few times and she asked angrily, "What does your shoulder being sore have to do with you talking?" It's not like his mouth is twitching. Dustless couldn't help but stare blankly when he heard this. Soon after, he awkwardly smiled and said, "That's right. Shoulder pain has nothing to do with mouth pain. However, you spoke too loudly just now and scared me. My mouth is starting to hurt again." Versilia almost threw the cup at him. This bastard was too despicable. She naturally understood what Dustless was hinting at. "Little girl, you have to think about it carefully. That spell engraving is really troublesome." Dustless suddenly said, "If you're lucky, you might just be a cripple. If you're unlucky, you'll definitely die. You win." Versilia hesitated for a while and finally walked behind Dustless. Her small hands took the initiative to massage Dustless's shoulders and back like a servant. Now you admit that you used the spell engraving?" Dustless turned his head and glanced at Versilia and said faintly, "Any kind of strength obtained through trickery will hurt others and oneself. The effect of the spell engraving is great. Every elf has a meridian in their body that is responsible for unblocking the power of divine might. You know that, right?" "I know." Versilia nodded like a student. "Spell engraving. Once this thing is implanted into the body, although it can temporarily obtain a powerful divine might, it has a fatal effect." Dustless closed his eyes and was silent for a while and said, "It can destroy all the meridian in an elf's body that is responsible for unblocking the divine might." "What?" Hearing this, Versilia's body suddenly trembled. She was shocked, and her small hands that were massaging Dustless's back suddenly increased their strength. Bang! Versilia heavily punched Dustless. It was completely a nerve reflex and it hurt so much that Dustless clenched his teeth, but there was nothing he could do. After all, this girl did not do it on purpose. "You're lying to me, right?" After being silent for a while, Versilia looked at Dustless with hostility. "Idiot, if I'm lying to you, why is it forbidden to use spell engraving on this continent?" Dustless sneered and asked. This woman was smart all her life but stupid this time. "Is it true?" Versilia's beautiful face turned ghastly pale when she heard these words. If what Wu Qin said was true, then her life was most probably finished. Just like what Dustless said, if the spell engraving only destroyed the meridian that unblocked the divine might, it could be considered lucky. Because if it was slightly more serious, Versilia might lose her life. However, even if it was the best result, Versilia could not accept it. If the meridian that unblocked the divine might was destroyed, it meant that she could no longer become an elf envoy. Thinking of this, Versilia's heart was filled with despair. "Little girl, you still want to fight with me?" Looking at the despondent Versilia, Dustless smiled and did not say anything. It was good for such a proud woman to suffer a blow, so that she would not be arrogant anymore. "Oh right." Versilia's eyes suddenly lit up as she suddenly thought of something. She stared at Dustless without blinking, and her breathing instantly became hurried. "Dustless, Xuan, can you help me?" Versilia's tone was gentle, and her eyes were like a painting, as if they were electrifying. Dustless looked at Versilia in disgust. Especially when she said "Dustless Xuan," it gave him goosebumps. This woman wanted to tear him into pieces just now. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2255. At this moment, facing Dustless's mockery, everyone's anger was extinguished. No one continued to refute. The scene was so silent that even the sound of people's heartbeats could be faintly heard. The scene was unbelievably quiet, and the situation was even a little strange. The white whale, to this group of decadent nobles, was like a nightmare. Because this beast was inextricably linked to the Witch of Jealousy, it instantly awakened the bad memories in everyone's hearts. The white whale had once killed humans and destroyed countless villages. The white whale was everyone's nightmare. Every time it appeared, it was accompanied by a large-scale disaster. It was worth mentioning that the previous sword saint, Teresa Vanisrisha, who was also the wife of the sword demon Wilhelm, had fallen in a battle with the white whale. Therefore, the white whale was not only powerful, but it was also infamous and was feared by people. Everyone, cough cough cough, that's what happened. You all heard it clearly. One of the ministers with white hair and beard suddenly stood up, instantly attracting everyone's attention. It seemed that he was a very respectable person. That monster, the white whale, has come out to cause trouble again. Soon, I'm afraid that the world will be in chaos again. So, we have unanimously decided. This old thing said a lot of nonsense. Dustless's ears were getting calluses from listening to it, but the general meaning was very simple and direct. The person who killed the white whale would be the new king, no matter who it was. "Old man, are you serious?" Anastasia was overjoyed. If that was the case, didn't she still have a chance to become the king? As long as that hateful beast was killed, whoever it was would be able to become the king without any resistance. Change just because you said so? Dustless, however, had a straight face. He was like a difficult king of hell. Whoever looked at him would uncontrollably shiver with a face full of fear, as if they had seen the grim reaper with a scythe. In most people's hearts, Dustless had already demonized, and they regarded him as a demon king who was even more terrifying and powerful than the Witch of Jealousy. You, the minister who spoke earlier, looked at Dustless angrily, but at the same time he felt helpless. Even these knights were no match for Dustless. Wasn't he an old man, 1,000 miles away from Dustless? In fact, it wasn't just him. Everyone lacked confidence when facing Dustless. After all, the difference in strength was destined to be huge. Lady Amelia, with no other choice, everyone could only look at Amelia. Compared to Dustless, she was simply like a kind and pure angel that was extremely amiable. Amelia clenched her fists tightly, not knowing what to do as she was being stared at by countless eyes. Don't be afraid. Just say what you really think. Wu Qin patted Amelia's shoulder and encouraged her with a gentle smile. I've decided to give up on the royal selection. Hearing Dustless's words, Amelia mustered up her courage and spoke in a crisp voice. Are you serious? Not only were the others stunned, even Dustless was surprised. At first, Amelia intended to give up on participating in the royal selection, then she participated for special reasons, and now she gave up again. Perhaps she was really tired after all the ups and downs along the way. Lady Amelia, please be careful with your words and take back your rash remarks just now. This is a joke, right? Others could be very calm and even full of joy because in many people's eyes, Amelia was the incarnation of the Witch of Jealousy, but there was one person who was an exception, Roswald. All along, his idea had been to use Amelia to become the king to slay the dragon, and then use the dragon's blood to resurrect his master, the Witch of Lust. However, if Amelia gave up on the royal selection, how could Roswald's plan be completed? He would be completely bankrupt, so he absolutely would not allow it. Damn it, this wretched girl changed her mind again. Can't she have some opinions? Roswald was furious, and the murderous intent in his heart raged. In the beginning, after experiencing various reasons, Amelia intended to give up the position of the royal selection. Later, he racked his brains and moved Amelia back, choosing to continue participating in the royal selection. But now that victory was imminent, this wretched girl was going to stand out again. Roswald was furious, but he did not show it properly. After all, Amelia was the object of his loyalty, at least in front of others. Due to excessive agitation, the clown costume on Roswald's face was messed up, and his face was gloomy. Lady Amelia, at this moment Roswald walked up to Amelia with a gloomy face and said seriously, "You're joking, right?" No. Unlike before, Amelia's answer this time was very simple and capable. Although her voice was still as weak as before, her resolute gaze contained an endless amount of determination. A series of ridicule and slander, Amelia was tired of it, and her body and soul were disgusted. "Bastard!" Roswald roared in his heart. He absolutely would not allow Amelia to give up the royal selection. He continued to dupe her, but once you give up the royal selection, it means that there will be a lot of danger around you. When the time comes, you have to. Do you think I'm heir? Roswald. Dustless interrupted with a smile and said, "It's good to have a challenge. To be honest, I'm tired of this kind of boring life. Come on, let the storm come more violently." "You bastard." Roswald's face was ashen. He couldn't wait to slap Dustless to death immediately. This guy is too hateful. He always goes against me intentionally or unintentionally every time. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2256. The Witch of Strong Lust, that is Rosswire's master. In order to force his master to resurrect again, Rosswire could sacrifice everything and use all the people he could use, but his plan was ruined by Dustless. How could he not be angry? Boom boom boom. A majestic magic burst out, and behind Rosswire, several bright energy balls suddenly swept out with infinite power. He looked at Dustless with a gloomy face. Yo, you wanna fight with me? It's not that I look down on you, but your arms and legs are thin. I really don't want to hurt you, but I can pinch you to death with just a few moves. Dustless narrowed his eyes and asked jokingly, have you seen real darkness and brutality? Do you want to experience it for yourself? The feeling of being cut into pieces? Whoosh whoosh whoosh. When Dustless's words fell, it was like a cold wind blowing. Everyone felt a chill down their spines, cold sweat broke out on their heads, and they looked at him with a cold face. This guy is indeed synonymous with brutality. Rosswire's face was extremely ugly, and his oppressive aura was actually restrained in an instant. Although the words were unpleasant, it has to be said that Dustless's words were still full of deterrence. He was terrified. Since you are Lady Amelia's knight, you should help her get the throne. Dustless, this is your destiny. Unable to beat Dustless, Rosswire could only launch a verbal attack. Dustless, do you hate me very much? Do you think I have no backbone and perseverance? I give up when I encounter setbacks. Amelia looked nervously at Dustless, holding her small hand. Is this important? Dustless smiled slightly, showing a warm smile. It doesn't matter how it is as long as you are happy, then it's fine as long as you have a clear conscience. It doesn't matter who is right or wrong as long as you have a clear conscience. Thank you. A warm smile blossomed on Amelia's face, as warm as the sun. Her gaze towards Dustless had also changed, becoming a little blurred. Amelia had always had a man of few words behind her back. He would not say much, nor would he ask much. He would only use his actions to help her. When she needed him the most, he would stand up for her. Don't tell me you've fallen for me? Dustless asked in a serious tone as he noticed that Amelia was staring at him intently. If it was in the past, Amelia would have admitted to such a question immediately. But this time she remained silent and her face was a little red. It seemed that Dustless had guessed her thoughts correctly. Ka. At this moment, the sound of glass shattering suddenly sounded. Looking up, Kiwimeo's face was covered in tears and his eyes were red. Damn Dustless, you will die a horrible death. You stole my girlfriend, you bastard. Kiwimeo roared in his heart, and his scarlet eyes were about to fall out. Boy, you want to fight with me? Ignorant people are fearless. How ridiculous. Dustless lowered his head and glanced at Kiwimeo, and said in a very narcissistic tone, you are not as handsome as me. You are ugly, and your strength is not even 1/10,000th of mine. You are even weaker than an ordinary soldier. How can you beat me? In front of countless people, Dustless was full of ridicule. Although his words were unpleasant, that was what he meant. And what Dustless said was the truth. In all aspects, Kiwimeo was not as good as him. The crowd just watched in silence and no one stood out to oppose Dustless. After all, what he said was the truth. Instead, many people looked at Kiwimeo with a sneer. So, Lady Amelia, are you sure you want to withdraw from this king's selection? Some nobles asked expectantly. In their eyes, Amelia was an inauspicious witch of jealousy, the incarnation of a devil. Let alone being a king, everyone would feel nauseous and uncomfortable when such a person appeared in their line of sight. However, Dustless was too strong, so no one dared to refute Amelia. Yes. Amelia said coldly. These nobles did not have a good impression of her, and she did not have a good impression of them either. She even felt disgusted with them. It's good that you give up. Many nobles looked at each other, their faces full of joy. Wait, Amelia has given up, but I haven't. Dustless suddenly said, looking at Curseus, a meaningful smile on his face. Since Amelia has given up, then I will join Curseus. I will become his knight and help him become king. What? The moment these words fell, everyone was startled. They looked at Dustless with astonishment. This guy really didn't play by the rules. As soon as Amelia announced her withdrawal from the king's selection, he turned to Quirxiu. Dustless, what are you thinking? Not only were the outsiders stunned, but even Amelia and Curseus were still in shock. They looked at Dustless in confusion, not knowing what this guy was thinking. It can't be. Curseus's eyes shone brightly. He suddenly thought of the reason and smiled bitterly. Do you really hate me that much? Is this a return gift for breaking off the engagement? To be honest, I've never hated you. On the contrary, I admire you. But admiration is not the same as love. Secondly, our worldviews are too different. You're still very young. In the future, you still have a sky that belongs to you, so I'll help you become the king. As for the matter of our marriage, it'll also be annulled at this point. Wuxian spoke frankly, explaining the reason within. I see. Hearing this, everyone came to a sudden realization and looked at Xiu enviously. In this way, the supreme position of king would definitely be in her bag. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 ratings plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2257. Don't be complacent too early. Everything is not as simple as you think. Do you think you can kill the white whale just because you want to? Do you think he's a docile sheep? Don't be naive. You're so naive. If the white whale was really so weak, then it wouldn't have been able to wreak havoc for hundreds of years without anyone being able to stop it. Even the previous sword saint died in the battle with the white whale. Kayatsuki Subaru, who had been holding back his anger, seemed to have found a good opportunity to show off his superiority. He quickly stood up to attack Dustless's confidence and ridiculed him in a sarcastic manner. Since the two of them were mortal enemies, Kayatsuki Subaru did not care. Even if he was killed, it did not matter. After all, he had the skill, death reincarnation, and could resurrect indefinitely. That's right. How can the white whale be killed so easily? Not to mention the strength of that beast, even its whereabouts are difficult for us to track. Mr. Kayatsuki Subaru's analysis makes sense. Some people think that they are arrogant just because they are strong. Naive. Kayatsuki Subaru's words immediately resonated with a large number of people who were unhappy with Dustless. They laughed disdainfully and tried to attack him as much as possible. Previously, this group of people had been humiliated by Dustless. If they did not find a chance to regain their dignity, how could they establish themselves in the future? Wouldn't they be treated as a clown? As expected, Dustless was not angry. Instead, a meaningful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Seeing Kayatsuki Subaru's confident look, he understood something in his heart. It seems that he has experienced death reincarnation, and knows the white whale like the back of his hand. That's why he dares to say such words. Dustless smiled and did not say anything. He quietly watched Kayatsuki Subaru put on a show and ignored all the mocking eyes around him. Why bother with a group of ants at the level of a small figure? It would only lower his status. A huge tiger would never look back at him because of a few barks. He could just ignore them. However, Dustless could stay calm, but some people were not willing to. Amelia and Kurth looked at Amelia unkindly. Their eyes were filled with the resentment of a young girl, and they stared at Kayatsuki Subaru with great dissatisfaction. If it wasn't for the fact that there were too many people and the situation wasn't suitable, perhaps Kayatsuki Subaru would have been beaten up already. You guys, what kind of charm does this guy have? I refuse to accept this. Kayatsuki Subaru screamed in his heart, especially when he saw Amelia's disgusted look. It deeply hurt him. He swore in his heart, "Look, I will make Anastasia sit on the throne, I will make you all look up to me, I will make you all regret looking down on me." In desperation, Kayatsuki Subaru could only grit her teeth and swallow her pride. She licked her wounds silently and looked forward to the day when she could soar high in the future. Alright, since that's the case, let's stop here. Everyone hurry back. Remember, the person who kills the white whale will be crowned king. The white-haired minister said in a steady and powerful tone, as if he was a man of his word. Time passed quickly. Within Curseus's manner. How confident are you that you can kill white whale? That guy comes and goes like a ghost. It's not easy to deal with him. Curseus's face was solemn. He had a headache because of this. At the same time, he was determined to get the white whale. The position of king was right in front of their eyes. Who could be at ease? For now, I don't have even 1% confidence. Dustless said honestly, it's not that I'm not as strong as him, but the whereabouts of white whale is a mystery. Only Kayatsuki Subaru can lure him out. Then why were you so confident before? Curseus rolled his eyes and immediately asked, Kayatsuki Subaru, is that guy really special? Yes, he is. If it weren't for my existence, he would be very successful. Even you would be defeated by his cleverness, Dustless said confidently. In the original work, Curseus had a good impression of Kayatsuki Subaru. But the current situation was different. Because of Dustless's existence, the two were standing on opposite sides. However, you don't have to worry. You can send someone to secretly follow Kayatsuki Subaru. When the white whale appears, I will kill it before Kaiwe Subaru. Dustless smiled and told his plan. Using Kaiwe Subaru to lure the white whale is a good use of waste. Then what are your plans now? Cursius frowned and asked. Amelia has left the royal city. After all, she has already withdrawn from the royal selection. Staying here will only be more dangerous. She decided to go to Roswald's house. Go to Roswald's house? That girl really walked right into the trap. Dustless rubbed his temples and asked a little gloomily, Has Amelia left now? Yes. In order not to distract you, she quietly left, together with Roswald and Ram. Only Rem was left to take care of you, Cursius said truthfully. Not to distract me? Dustless shook his head and said angrily, It's because she and Roswald are together that I will be distracted. That guy is not a good person. Amelia is also simple enough. Sometimes she trusts people too easily. You mean Roswald? Cursius frowned slightly. He knew about Roswald's intelligence. He had always supported Amelia's participation in the royal selection. Yes, in my hometown, there is a saying that it's hard to draw a person's bones. You may know a person's face but not his heart. Roswald is such a person. Dustless said directly. In fact, Roswald was really not a good person. In the original work, the gut hunter, Elusa who attacked Kaiwe Subaru, Falut, and Amelia was hired by Roswald. Therefore this guy was very insidious and despicable. In order to resurrect his master, the Witch of Lust, he would do anything and didn't care about sacrificing anyone. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2258. Is he really as hateful as you say? Kurth looked at Dustless suspiciously. It was hard to doubt Roswald. After all, he had always been extremely loyal to Amelia and supported her to participate in the king's selection, even to the point of death. Do you think it's necessary for me to frame him? Dustless asked softly and immediately shook his head. Even you were deceived. It can only mean that the acting talent is too smart and real, but this is normal. If you want to uncover Roswald's true face, you still need special evidence. There was no doubt that his biggest trump card was Elusa, who was supposed to be dead. When the time came, she would stand up and testify against Roswald's crimes. No matter what, I believe you. Kurth's pretty face showed a brilliant smile, like a blooming flower, beautiful beyond compare. You believe in me so much. To be honest, I'm really flattered. Dustless rubbed his nose and looked at Corksiu strangely. He suddenly thought of something. About the marriage you mentioned before, you want to break off the engagement? Kurth asked faintly, his tone suddenly flat, obviously extremely dissatisfied. Break off the engagement? Hearing this, Wu Qin was incomparably astonished and he asked tongue-tied, break off the engagement? Don't say that or the misunderstanding will be big. When did we have a marriage contract? It used to be just a discussion of marriage. Why did it become breaking off the engagement now? You still don't know? Kurth's mouth showed a mysterious arc and he chuckled. The whole King City knows that we are engaged. If you want to break off the engagement now, how can I stand in the future? Even if I become king, I will live in your shadow for the rest of my life. Dustless's face darkened, and the corner of his mouth trembled a few times. You spread the news, right? No one knows about our marriage at all. It seems to be limited to you, me, and Amelia. Amelia naturally wouldn't be so bored to go out and spread it, so it can only be you. This news, you spread it yourself, right? Dustless was depressed. To be honest, he was really surprised that Kurth could be so obsessed with him. So what? Kurth calmly said, what's done can't be undone. The whole kingdom knows that we are engaged. Are you going to divorce me? Let me tell you, if this is the case, let alone the king, even I myself will never be able to raise my head. If you would rather be a heartless scum and make me unable to raise my head for the rest of my life, then I don't care. I'll just take it that I was blind and misjudged you. Motherf *Ker. He's obviously pestering me endlessly, but it really makes me speechless. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was too lazy to continue arguing about this. He would just take it one step at a time. Half an hour later, Cursius ordered his subordinates to prepare a dragon carriage, as well as a large amount of food and water, as if they were going on a long journey. Dustless rolled his eyes, but he understood that this was Cursius' good intentions, so he accepted it all. As the saying went, one shouldn't hit a smiling person. Never hurt a person who sincerely cares about you. As for Kurth's request to send a group of soldiers to protect Dustless decisively rejected it. More people meant slower speed. If something went wrong, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Thus only Dustless and Rem left. The matter of driving the dragon carriage was left to her, while Dustless focused on resting. After a few more words, Dustless and Rem disappeared under Kurth's complicated gaze. Lord Kurth, I'm jealous that you care so much about Dustless, the cat with the eerie ears suddenly said. At this moment, the cat-eared youth suddenly spoke with jealousy. This person was clearly a man, but he was dressed like a woman. Furthermore, his appearance was very similar to a woman's. If one didn't know his true nature, they would have mistaken him for a cute girl, but in reality, Felix was a man. I really can't figure out how I'm not as good as Amelia, Kurth sighed faintly. His words were filled with unwillingness and envy. At the same time, he glanced at Felix and ordered seriously, from now on, keep an eye on Kaiwa Subaru's every move. Don't miss even the slightest detail. Remember to tell me everything. Understood, Lord Kurth. Felix nodded. Although he didn't know why, he still agreed. Dustless Cohen, there's no need to be so anxious. Lord Roswald will definitely protect Lady Amelia. On the other side, Rem was driving the dragon carriage on the road. He was very skilled, and at the same time he didn't forget to turn his head to comfort Dustless. You don't know, but I'm worried about that guy Roswald. Dustless's eyes flashed with a cold light. Now that Amelia had given up on Wang Xian, causing Roswald's plan to resurrect his master to fail, who knew what crazy things this guy would do? By the way, Rem, there's something I've always wanted to ask you. Dustless suddenly looked at Rem, who was driving the dragon carriage, and asked in a deep voice, if I decide to kill Roswald, what will you sisters do? Will you fight me with your sword? Rem was suddenly stunned and looked back at Dustless blankly. Apparently, he didn't expect him to ask this and was speechless for a while. Forget it. Seeing that Rem was silent, Dustless waved his hand in defeat. In fact, he hoped that Rem would stand on his side, but now it seemed that this idea was too extravagant and unrealistic. After all, for Rem, both the palm of his hand and the back of his hand were his flesh and blood, and he really couldn't give them up at will. By the way, let me tell you, the words that reached the corner of his mouth stopped abruptly. Dustless suddenly smelled a lot of blood in the air, and suddenly remembered an extremely evil sect, and his murderous intent suddenly skyrocketed. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2259. What a disgusting smell. Rem's delicate nose wrinkled slightly. Apparently she also smelled a lot of blood in the air. It was supposed to be fresh air, but every time she took a breath, she would smell a strong pungent smell full of the smell of slaughter, which made her want to vomit uncontrollably. Moreover, what made Rem most uncomfortable was that this smell was somewhat familiar, and she had always hated it. It's them? Rem's cute and delicate face, which looked like a porcelain doll, suddenly twisted as if he had suddenly thought of some tragic experience. Damn the witch cult. Seeing this, Dustless didn't say anything. He smiled knowingly, stretched again, and said, It seems that I didn't guess wrong. It's really that group of worms? Rem, are you afraid? Rem is not afraid. Rem didn't even think about it when she heard this. She shook her head directly and said with hatred, Rem can't wait to slaughter those disgusting scum with my own hands. After her voice fell, Rem's little face twisted again, emitting a dense hostility, and her little face was covered with a layer of frost. The two sisters were ghosts since they were young and had a happy childhood, but one day this happy and harmonious childhood was broken. The witch cult suddenly came to their door. Not to mention the destruction of the ghost race, Rem and Ram's parents were killed in that battle, and even the horn on Ram's forehead was cut off because of the witch cult. Therefore the two sisters hated the witch cult to the bone and were extremely sensitive to their smell. When Kaituki Subaru lived in Roswald's house, the reason why he was killed one after another was that in addition to being somewhat suspicious, his body exuded the smell of the witch, so he was killed several times by the two sisters. Now that the witch cult suddenly appeared, it immediately aroused Rem's hatred. Is that so? You look like you hate them, huh? That's for the best. I also don't like that group of trash. Now rush in and destroy those disgusting fat worms. Dustless ordered coldly. Rem understands. Hearing this, Rem's face showed a charming smile, but it looked extremely bloodthirsty and sinister. Boom, boom, boom. With Dustless's order, Rem drove the carriage extremely quickly and rushed into the lifeless village. Everywhere were corpses that had died miserably. There were even some who were cruelly dismembered, such a dead face as expected of the scum of the demonist sect. Dustless glanced at the fist. Seeing that there were no corpses of Amelia and the others, He heaved a sigh of relief. Swish, swish, swish. Just 1 or 2 minutes after breaking into the deathly silent village, Dustless felt that he was being stared at by countless obscure eyes. It was as if a hungry demon had encountered a fragrant delicacy, and they swallowed their saliva. Everyone's eyes were filled with strong greed. Rem, don't worry about me. Kill as many as you can. Dustless sat leisurely on the dragon chariot, turning a deaf ear to the furtive glances. He said lightly, these idiots are too much of an eyesore. Their disappearance can purify the air. The more the better. Understood, Dustless, Kuan. Rem gently nodded his head. Soon after, a meteor hammer suddenly appeared in his hand. He was originally smiling at Wu Qin. However, when he turned his head to look at the hidden demonist disciple, his small face instantly twisted. At the same time, after Dustless left the royal city to search for Amelia, Katsuki Subaru quickly carried out his plan. In a quiet bedroom in Anastasia's mansion, Katsuki Subaru and Julius were not the only ones who were there. Even Reinhardt was there. Subaru, why are you looking for me? Looking at the mysterious Katsuki Subaru, Reinhardt couldn't help but ask, don't tell me you want to work together to deal with Dustless? If that's the case, I advise you to give up your plan. That guy is too invincible. He's beyond my ability to deal with. Just like what Dustless said the other day, he's not in the same dimension as us. Bullsh *T dimension. Katsuki Subaru snorted in his heart, but on the surface he said with a smile, of course I'm not looking for Dustless. My plan is to team up with everyone to hunt down the white whale. I know where it is. Katsuki Subaru's words were shocking. Both Reinhardt and Julius looked at him suspiciously. Obviously they didn't believe him. It wasn't their fault. Katsuki Subaru had never traveled far. How could he know where the white whale was hiding? It was just too funny. I'm not interested in joining. Reinhardt shook his head, then stood up and looked like he was about to leave. Wait. Katsuki Subaru suddenly became anxious. He quickly blocked Reinhardt's way and scolded, Reinhardt, don't you want to help Ferret become the king? Of course I do. Reinhardt was very annoyed. But Lord Ferret is not interested in this. Besides, I've already lost to Dustless in the previous duel. I promised him that I wouldn't force Lord Ferret. Idiot. Katsuki Subaru immediately sneered. You don't have to force Ferret, but you can totally challenge the white whale. After you kill him, what do you think the nobles will think? You mean? Hearing this, Reinhardt's eyes suddenly lit up. As long as he killed the white whale, according to the agreement at that time, the person who killed the white whale's knight would become the king. This was a small loophole. Reinhardt didn't force Ferret, but she still became the king. Dustless's original request was not to allow Reinhardt to continue forcing Ferret. But now he didn't force Ferret. If he killed the white whale directly, Ferret would still become the king. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2260. Reinhardt was in a dilemma. How should he choose? To be honest, he really didn't know what to do. Although there was a loophole, it would undoubtedly ruin Reinhardt's reputation as a knight. Idiot, you are still hesitating at this time? Keiichi Subaru scolded in his heart. But when he thought of Reinhardt's importance, he patiently explained, you helped Ferret become the future king and the world will praise your achievements. Who will care about this? Give me a day to think about it. Reinhardt waved his hand impatiently and left alone. He was extremely conflicted and was caught in a dilemma. In the big room, only Keiichi Subaru and his second natural enemy, Julius, were left. You are really a demon. After a while, Julius glanced at Keiichi Subaru coldly, and a strange color flashed in his eyes. I am a demon? Keiichi Subaru frowned, thinking that Julius was insinuating that he was being scolded. He suddenly became unhappy and said unhappily, what do you mean by that? Nothing. Julius sat down calmly, closed his eyes and said slowly, Reinhardt is a knight among knights and he carries the title of Sword Saint. His will is unquestionable, but at this moment, you've shaken his will with just your flowery words. Aren't you a devil? Hee hee. Hearing this, Keiichi Subaru suddenly laughed. She was so bright and proud. She said proudly, is this my illusion? Or is there something wrong with my ears? Julius, it sounds like you are praising me. Keiichi Subaru, you can think that, but in my eyes, you are still an idiot who overestimates himself, Julius said calmly and seriously. You asshole. However, such a simple sentence made Keiichi Subaru furious. His tone made it sound like he was born an idiot who couldn't be saved. Is that not the case? Julius looked at Keiichi deeply and said coldly, "Your skills are not as good as others, but you still dare to provoke others. If this is not an idiot, then what is? I don't think I've gone too far. I can't deny that you have an enterprising heart and know how to work hard. You hope to create your own future with your own hands. I admire this very much, but—" Julius suddenly raised his voice, revealing mockery and disdain. "Everything, whether it's a human, an animal, or a lifeless thing, has its own limits. Your dream is not proportional to your ability. You give me the impression that you're like a worm in a ditch that wants to soar into the sky. It's ridiculous. It's too funny. You bastard." Hearing this, Keiichi's eyes were burning. She couldn't help but roll up her sleeves and throw a punch at Julius. Bang! Julius raised his palm and caught Keitsuki's fist effortlessly. He shook his head and said, "Too weak. You are more fragile than I thought. I really don't understand why an idiot like you dares to provoke Dustless. Is it just because Lady Amelia likes him? How ugly." Bang! Then Julius's eyes turned cold. He threw Keiichi away and turned to leave resolutely. Only his cold words were left in the huge room. "Since ancient times, beauties have loved heroes. This is understandable. Compared to you, I hope that Lady Amelia will be with Dustless. At least no one will dare to ridicule and look down on her. What about you? Have you ever thought about what you can bring to Amelia? Sure enough, the ignorant are fearless." Bang! 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 In the dead silent village there were countless screams. Many of the followers of the witch sect were cruelly killed by Remington. Their bodies were all smashed to death by the meteor hammer. Their deaths were extremely miserable and frightening. Not even a complete body was left. Almost all of them were dismembered. The bang, bang, bang sound of the bodies being dismembered never stopped. TSK. Is this Rem's horn? She has indeed become a lot stronger after coming out. Dustless supported his head with his hand and sat lazily on the dragon chariot. He looked at Rem, who was like a tiger that had entered a pack of wolves. She was killing in all directions, almost crushing the followers of the witch sect alone. No one could defeat her. At this moment, Rem's strength was extremely good. At least, it was relatively good in this world. However, Rem's horn also had a negative effect that couldn't be ignored. For example, as the killing deepened, Rem gradually lost her own consciousness and turned into a beast that only knew how to kill. However, Dustless didn't stop this. Instead, he just watched quietly. The impression that the demoness sect had left on her was simply too deep, and after suppressing it for so long, Rem's personality had become twisted. Now that she was able to destroy the demoness sect and vent the hatred in her heart, she would be able to see past her painful past and face her future with an optimistic spirit. From a different perspective, this was a good thing. "All right, Insect King hiding in the dark, it's time for you to come out." At this moment, Dustless spoke lazily. He turned his head and looked at the dark shadow in the woods behind him. "I remember you are called Vitrugius Romanicanti. Come out. Come out and play with me. I'm tired of watching you now. I need someone like you to practice with me, you idiot clown." Vitrugius Romanicanti was the laziness of the witch sect's great sins. He was one of the earliest great sins sect's great sins. He was just a living pervert. His appearance was also extremely frightening. It would be more appropriate to call him a living ghost. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2261. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. In an unfamiliar world, Restia was terrified. She stared at this wonderful world with her mouth agape. Although Restia gave people the impression that she was extremely bold, she was ultimately a girl. Furthermore, Dustless had always been cruel and didn't play by the rules. Who knew what kind of cruel treatment he had suffered? What kind of strange place is this? Another world? No, how can it be another world? That kid isn't a god. Restia quickly shook her head. She couldn't believe it and guessed inwardly, could it be an illusion? When illusions reach a certain level of perfection, it can also reach the point of passing off the fake as the real thing. Girl. A ripple appeared in the void, and a wave that was visible to the naked eye struck. That indifferent voice resounded in Restia's mind without any warning. An illusion is an illusion. How can it be passed off as real? Do you really think I'm a child? Inside Tsukuyami's space, Restia sneered. An illusion is an illusion. How can it be passed off as real? What's fake will always be fake. Is that really the case? The slightly amused voice sounded again. Following that, Dustless suddenly appeared in front of Restia like a ghost, giving her a fright. Is this guy's strength? He's so strong. Restia's heart trembled. She was still hoping to avenge God Fengzhao, but Dustless's ability to be undetectable had refreshed Restia's understanding. The chances of revenge were 0. Why don't we give it a try? Dustless's lips curled into a playful smile. I refuse. Without even thinking, Restia replied without hesitation. It wasn't beneficial to her, so why should she agree? That's not up to you. This is Tsukuyami's world. Everything in the world is under my control. You have to agree even if you don't want to, Dustless said frankly, his heart as calm as still water. Anyway, it's an illusion. It's ultimately fake. Restia curled her lips in disdain and immediately grabbed the tender flesh of her left arm with her right hand. Since it's an illusion, I'll definitely pinch myself. It hurts. It actually hurts? Restia opened her mouth in disbelief. Isn't this an illusion world? This guy created a world in the blink of an eye? This is too inconceivable. Looking at the unfamiliar world, Celestia was dumbfounded. What kind of terrifying ability was this? Creating a world in the blink of an eye? Hallucination. It must be a hallucination. Although the pain was real, Lestia still stubbornly believed that it was a hallucination. In fact, it was also an illusion, but Tsukuyami was relatively special. You rejected my offer, didn't you? Dustless looked at Restia with a smile. Suddenly, his expression changed and turned cold. My temper has been very bad recently. You'd better be sensible. If I do something crazy, it won't be good for everyone. Haven't you done enough crazy things? Celestia muttered to herself gloomily. At the same time, she wanted to see how shameless Wu Chen could be. She said coldly, I won't agree. Then you can't blame me for this. Dustless laughed evilly. With a wave of his hand, Celestia's clothes were torn apart, revealing her pure white body. Kacha. With a loud sound, Dustless's clothes were torn apart. The two of them were naked. Hooligan. Lysia shrieked and hurriedly turned her back to Dustless as she scolded, stinking shameless fellow, tearing other people's clothes without a word. If you're so formidable, why don't you ascend to the heavens? Didn't I say before that I have a bad temper? You still have to provoke me. Dustless grumbled. It's best if this despicable and shameless fellow is struck to death by the heavens. Celestia cursed and suddenly understood why Dustless had done so. If you dare to report this, don't blame me for falling out with you. Dustless closed his body and walked in front of Celestia. He hugged her body and with a wave of his hand, a luxurious bed appeared and placed Celestia on it. It's an illusion anyway. It's fake. Do whatever you want. Celestia didn't mind as she allowed Dustless to touch her. I originally planned on letting you off, but since you want me to do whatever I want, I won't stand on ceremony. With that said, Dustless possessed Celestia's body and mind. In the real world, Celestia opened her eyes and heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that the illusion had been removed. Clearly, the nightmarish experience of being poisoned was fake. Only a few seconds had passed. Damn it, it's clearly an illusion world? Why does my body hurt so much? Celestia stretched her body slightly and recalled Dustless's madness in Tsukuyami world. Her face flushed red with embarrassment and anger. Wasn't everything that Tsukuyami world had endured fake? Why did her body hurt the same? Hee hee, Dustless's laughter suddenly sounded. In Celestia's eyes, it was far more terrifying than a devil. Recalling what Dustless had done in Tsukuyami world, Celestia immediately wished she could die. Seeing how scared you are, I didn't waste my effort in casting Tsukuyami. Lass, I don't care what you do. It's best if you comfort Claire and the other girls. Otherwise, everything you experienced in Tsukuyami will happen in reality. Dustless smiled faintly, but in Celestia's eyes, it was extremely terrifying. I understand. Celestia nodded obediently in a surprising manner before standing up and slowly leaving. Plop. However, before she could take 2 steps, Celestia fell to the ground. Her body was hollowed out and she couldn't move an inch. Tsukuyami was an extremely unique illusion. The pain experienced in the illusory world would also be experienced by the body in the real world. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2262. You want me to settle it? Lestia was in a dilemma. She felt as though she had smashed a rock on herself. She revealed the matter of Versilia and Dustless's adultery just to cause conflict between them and make Dustless's life miserable. But now, not only did she not dig a hole for Dustless, but she also dug a hole for herself. Lestia's pretty face was gloomy. She wanted to say something, but she found it difficult to do so. She couldn't be laughed at by Dustless, right? If you can't settle it, I'll tell you, Lestia. I'll show you what a real beast is. I was too kind back in the Tsukuyami space. Leaving behind these words, Dustless left in a carefree manner. You call that being merciful? Lestia couldn't help but recall the tragic experience in the Tsukuyami space. She was F***ed in various positions for 24 hours without stopping. It was a miracle that she didn't go into shock and could even walk. And now, Dustless said that he was merciful back then. How terrifying would it be when he mercilessly took revenge on her? Thinking of this, Lestia felt a chill run down her spine and hurriedly ran out. She couldn't afford to offend a pervert like Dustless, so she could only appease Claire and the others. Meanwhile, Dustless went to a special place, Dean Grievous's office. Damn it, it's here again? At this moment, Grievous didn't look like before. Her face was pale like a patient with a serious illness. Her internal organs were engulfed by a heart-wrenching pain. She lay on the desk and wailed in pain, but she gritted her teeth and didn't let herself cry out. A long time ago, Grievous implanted a curse in her body, and her body accumulated a lot of damage over the years. Later, she became the champion of the Elven Sword Dance Festival. Back then, she made a wish after winning to prolong her life that was almost depleted by the curse. Fortunately, she succeeded. Grievous pulled through, but she was still tormented by her illness. "Ah, it's rare to see you in such a sorry state." A ghostly voice suddenly sounded, and Grievous stood up reflexively. Her gaze swept over to the source of the voice, and Dustless, who was munching on an apple, appeared before her eyes. "You barged into my office without my permission. Brat, you sure have guts." Grievous's tone was cold, but there wasn't much blame in it. It was useless to blame or punish him. Dustless did not care about her at all. The so-called punishment was just asking for humiliation because Dustless did not carry it out at all. "Old witch," looking at the pale Grievous, Dustless asked with a smile, "you seem to be in a lot of pain. It doesn't feel good to implant a spell rune in your body, does it?" "What nonsense are you talking about? Don't spread rumors or I can treat it as slandering me." Grey was scolded angrily, but the panic in her eyes disappeared in a flash. The biggest secret in her life was casually spoken by Dustless. How could she not be surprised? "Still pretending with me?" Dustless looked at Grievous disdainfully and sneered, "Under my eyes, don't say that you just implanted a spell rune. I know what color your fatness is. It's purple, right?" "Nonsense, it's obviously black. Bastard, you dare to trick me?" Grievous, who reacted, glared angrily. This bastard actually dared to tease her. Outrageous. "You don't have to be angry. Am I wrong?" Dustless asked faintly. Hearing this, Grievous was silent. Although she didn't know where Dustless got the news, looking at his calm appearance, it didn't seem like he was talking nonsense. "Where did you get the news?" Grievous asked suspiciously. There were very few people who knew that she had implanted a spell rune, or even none. Dustless suddenly appeared and knew her biggest secret. How could she not be surprised? "You don't have to worry about this." Dustless didn't mention it. Who let this is the foresight of a transmigrator. As long as he changed the topic, he said, "Although you escaped the torture of death, the spell rune is still in your body, and it will continue to torture you. That kind of intense pain, although not fatal, is very difficult to bear, right?" Dustless said softly. When he didn't say a word, Grievous' pale cheeks would have a little more sweat. Except for the old illness, the rest was Dustless's cold sweat. "Boy, who are you?" Unable to suppress the curiosity in her heart, Grievous asked. At the same time, she was secretly on guard. As long as Dustless acted rashly, she would definitely kill him. Grievous had offended many people in her life, and there were many people who wanted her life, such as God Fengzhao. Back then, someone hired God Fengzhao to kill Grievous. The young God Fengzhao took on this mission, but Grievous's strength was beyond imagination. She easily defeated God Fengzhao and took him in as a servant. He disguised himself as a woman and lived with Grievous for 3 years. Later on, he participated in the Fairy Sword Dance Festival and won. Is that her contracted spirit? It seems to be called Earl? Dustless blinked for a second and suddenly felt a murderous aura locking onto him. Without a doubt, Grievous was the only one in this house. At this moment, there were several black spheres floating around her. They were only about the size of a fist. They looked ordinary and didn't seem to be a threat. However, Wu Qin clearly felt a cold force directed at him. "Grievous, have you forgotten the lesson from last time?" Dustless raised his voice, and the words that came out of his mouth carried a trace of spiritual pressure. Boom, boom, boom. Although it was only a trace of spiritual pressure, Grievous was trembling, and even her soul was trembling. As for the floating black spheres, they had already exploded. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2263. Gulp. Being locked on by this powerful aura, Gruaz gasped for breath. Due to the high frequency of her breathing, even her magnificent cleavage jumped out of her clothes. So strong, stronger than anyone I have seen before. Gruaz's eyes flickered and she couldn't hide her astonishment. At the same time she gave up resisting. She was a person with foresight. Although she didn't know what Dustless's motive was, she was sure that if he wanted to kill her, she would be killed instantly. Moreover, her contract spirit, Earl, had been shattered by Dustless. It sounded ridiculous. As the most powerful Twilight Witch on the continent, Gruaz would be killed instantly one day. If this news spread, everyone would be shocked and think that it was a joke. Retract your aura. I admit that I have implanted the incantation. Gruaz didn't argue and replied. Since Dustless dared to look for her so confidently, he obviously had sufficient evidence. I have a way to treat the hidden illness in your body, Dustless said calmly, but in Gruaz's earpiece she was horrified. Impossible, such a troublesome thing can't be cured. Gruaz shook her head repeatedly. She wouldn't believe it even if she was beaten to death. Dustless's words were too exaggerated. How could it be cured safely after implanting the incantation? This was definitely illogical. Of course, he could also imitate Gruaz's method and become the champion of the Elf Sword Dance Festival and make a wish. However, this was a temporary solution. The incantation was still tormenting Gruaz's body and mind. This burden didn't disappear. Come in, little girl. Right at this time, Dustless suddenly looked outside the door and said, feeling even more speechless, You, this fellow, are too strict. Wherever I go, you have to follow me there. What if I leave this world one day? Creak. Following Dustless's words, Versilia walked in with a smile and leaned on Dustless's shoulder intimately. Her head rubbed against Dustless's chest. Cough, cough, cough. Seeing this, Grievous felt even more indignant. She raised her eyebrows slightly. Where do you think your office is? It's not like it's a love nest for you couples to flirt with. You think my words are unbelievable? Dustless asked softly as his gaze focused on Grievous. It's not that I doubt your ability. It's just that some things are really impossible to achieve. It's too unreal. The burden brought by the healing mantra engraving is more than simply inconceivable, it's simply a fantasy. If it was anyone else who said this, she would definitely think that the other party was crazy. It was because Dustless was strong that she did not chase him out. Dustless patted Versilia's head and she walked out obediently. Seriously, if I don't show you the results, you won't believe me, Celia. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, an extremely powerful divine aura erupted from Versilia's weak body. Due to the close distance, it was as if she was in a level 10 storm and her body was out of control. Impossible. 3 years ago when you competed with Liena Subble, you didn't have such a powerful divine aura. How did your divine aura grow to this extent in just 3 years? Sensing the extent of Versilia's divine aura, Grievous asked in a deep voice. She looked at Versilia with eyes like torches. She suddenly guessed a possibility. You're right. She also implanted the mantra engraving. Dustless spoke for Versilia and said lazily, and she suffered the same pain as you before, but it was cured later. Really? Hearing this, Grievous jumped up in an instant and looked at Versilia excitedly. After all, the root of this illness had tortured her for many years. Indeed. Versilia nodded. She looked at Dustless and said, Yes, it was my husband who cured her. Husband? Hearing Versilia's address, the corner of Grievous's mouth twitched. She looked at Dustless unhappily with dissatisfaction in her eyes. It was as if she was saying, My school has become your harem. Why did you save me? Grievous suddenly asked. She still didn't believe that there was a free lunch in this world. However, perhaps because she was impatient, Dustless's valiant answer stunned Grievous. She was in a daze and didn't move like a statue. Girl, where did you get so much nonsense from? I just want to show off in front of you and show off my superiority, okay? I want you to admire and worship me, okay? Can't I? Dustless casually found an excuse. He really didn't know where Grievous got so much nonsense from. I saved you out of kindness, but you still have so much nonsense to say. This reason is too. Alright, I have no choice but to accept this reason of yours. I admit defeat. Grievous had no choice but to lower her head in shame. After hemming and hawing for a long time, Grievous was still at a loss for words. Dustless words were like a bomb in the deep sea, exploding the wisdom in her mind beyond the 9 heavens. Encountering such a person who didn't play according to common sense, even an immortal would have a headache. Looking at Grievous's tearless expression, Versilia pursed her lips and chuckled. She could understand her pain because back then she was dizzy from being angered by Dustless. Dustless's eloquence was extensive and profound. Even if it was a random excuse, she knew that he was spouting nonsense, but the most painful thing was that she couldn't refute it. In fact, Dustless didn't have any other thoughts. Anyway, he had nothing to do. Although Grievous was a snobbish woman, he couldn't deny that she took good care of him. There was no harm in helping her this once. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2264. Yes, I have made up my mind. I will not continue to participate in the king's selection. Although she couldn't figure out why Ross was so serious, Amelia nodded firmly, a smile suddenly hung on her face and she said softly, Dustless said that no matter what it is, as long as you are happy and have no regrets, maybe the greatest joy in my life is that I got to know him. About the king's selection, even if I withdraw, I will not regret it. Amelia's tone was resolute and unwavering. Is that damn guy Dustless again? What kind of charm does he have? Ross's face twitched and he almost roared out. Pay attention to your words, Ross. Amelia's gem-like crystal pupils flashed with a chill. Dustless has been regarded as the most important person by her. Pay attention to my words? Lady Amelia. No. I can't call you that now, I should use you. I can't call you Lady Amelia, I can just call you Amelia. Ross's face was cold and he said disdainfully, Since you have given up on the king's selection, I don't have to respect you. Not only that, but now I will dominate your will and let you continue to participate in the king's selection. You have no choice. What do you mean, Ross? Amelia's face changed greatly when she heard the words and she was stunned. At this moment he was so strange. The meaning is very simple, you have to participate even if you don't want to. Now that he had torn his face, Ross did not hide it and said coldly, You have no choice, you have to play this game to the end, you have to get the position of king, and help me slay the dragon. Slay the dragon. Amelia stared at the crazy Ross and saw the ambition in the depths of his eyes. Only then did she realize that she seemed to have fallen into a huge conspiracy. Perhaps at the beginning, the reason why Ross supported her to participate in the king's selection was to complete the so-called slaying of the dragon. What is your intention to slay the dragon? Amelia clenched her fists. At this moment Ross was so strange and terrible, his eyes were like black holes that wanted to swallow the whole world. I won't hide it from you, Amelia. Roswald's gaze was unusually cold. Do you know why I support you to participate in the selection? It's because after you become the king, I can use your identity to slay a dragon and use the dragon's blood to revive my master. This is the reason why I supported you to become the king. But now that you want to withdraw, do you think I'll let you go so easily? Don't be childish. You don't have a choice. You must participate. Use the dragon's blood to revive your master? Amelia's face turned to one side and she looked at Roswald with a wary look. Obviously this guy was going to use tough means. My master is the Witch of Lust. Roswald said softly, a touch of nostalgia suddenly appeared in his cold eyes. I've been struggling at death's door for 400 years, just for one purpose. To resurrect master, I can only use the dragon's blood, so do you think I will let you give up the king's choice? That's just wishful thinking. Roswald looked at Amelia. At this moment, his eyes were cold again, flashing with green light, like a poisonous snake hidden in the dark. So, what you did in the past was to use me? Amelia was hurt when she heard those words. Deep in her heart, she had always trusted Roswald. Even before Dustless appeared, she had always put Roswald's words in the first place. Nonsense, I invested in you because I saw your value. Otherwise, do you really think I'm interested in you? What a joke. You're also clear about your own status and situation. You're receiving everyone's hostility. Don't think that everyone will open their hearts and accept you like Wu Chen. You're too childish, Amelia. Roswald's face was full of disdain. Amelia was criticized because of her resemblance to the Witch of Jealousy. There were very few people who really accepted her, only the freak Dustless and the love-struck fool Tsukihara. If it weren't for your value, do you think I would approach you? Serve you as my master? That's ridiculous. Roswald sneered and immediately said, So in this game you have no choice. Even if you don't want to play, you have to participate in it. If you can't get the position of king, then you can die. When his voice fell, Roswald's body burst out with a strong killing intent, and Amelia felt suffocated. Knock knock knock. At this moment, the sound of knocking on the door suddenly came in, and Rum came in with a tea set. "Lady Amelia, Lord Roswald, do you also need supper?" Rum found that Roswald was also in Amelia's room and was surprised and immediately said, "Or Rum can go and prepare." Shoo shoo shoo. Before his voice fell, Roswald swept in front of Rum at an incredible speed, and there was a gloomy chill in the depths of his eyes. "Rum, run, Roswald has changed." Amelia quickly reminded Rum when she caught the killing intent in Roswald's eyes. "I'm sorry, Rum, although you are very important to me, but, compared with Master, no one is worth mentioning. My plan can't be exposed now. Only Amelia and I know about it, so I can only ask you to close your eyes forever." When his voice fell, Roswald directly locked Rum's throat and exerted his strength, trying to crush her throat alive. Lord Roswald." This scene came too suddenly and Rum was subdued in an instant. He stared at the ferocious Roswald and felt inexplicably panicked. Is this still the very casual and caring Roswald? At this moment, it was as if he was possessed by a demon. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2265. Lamu's heart was filled with shock. If it weren't for the feeling of suffocation, she would really think that this was a dream. It's too unrealistic. How could Sir Roswald, who has always been full of kindness, do such a cruel thing to her? If it weren't for the suffocation that made her uncomfortable, maybe Lamu would really think that this was a dream. After all, Roswald's impression is very friendly. He often dresses up as a clown. He doesn't have any airs. He is very amiable and he looks approachable, but at the moment he is so scary. Especially the green eyes, they are terrible, as if they want to devour people. "I haven't exposed you yet and you can't wait to do it?" A ghostly voice suddenly burst out and Ross Swire was shocked. He looked back and saw that it was a heavy punch that hit him back. Boom. There was no mercy in this punch and Roswald was directly blown out. It was very miserable. With a crack, several teeth were smashed out by the punch. "Bastard, who attacked me?" Roswald was furious and grimaced in pain. For the first time in so many years, he was so embarrassed and his old face suddenly became ferocious. "Who is it?" Not only Roswald, but Amelia also stared at the figure in the darkness. How long has it been? Have you forgotten me?" "Anyway, I have been a housekeeper in your house for a few days, Roswald. It's not kind of you to forget me so quickly." A playful voice came from the darkness, and then the mysterious figure moved, and a familiar outline came out with a bright smile on her face. "Sister, are you okay?" Rem ran to Lamu nervously and looked left and right, especially the red handprint on Lamu's neck, which made Rem angry. Perhaps if the other party was not Roswald, she would have smashed the other party to pieces with a meteor hammer. "You bastard, you actually came back. Aren't you helping Kurth participate in the king's selection?" Roswald wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and his eyes were gloomy. "But this is just right, I was just about to settle our grievances, damn bastard." Regarding the impression of Dustless, Roswald only had one feeling, an unforgettable hatred. It was because of this guy's appearance that all the factors that were beneficial to him had turned into unfavorable ones. Everything had turned into bubbles. The entire plan had failed because of this Dustless. "Are you all right, Amelia?" Dustless quietly walked to Amelia's side. Seeing that she was safe and sound and only a little frightened, he nodded. "Settle accounts with me? Was this a joke?" "With all due respect, this joke isn't funny at all." Dustless glanced at Roswald faintly and said indifferently, "You are too weak. If you want to deal with me, you have to be at least 1,000 times stronger." "Are you looking down on me?" Ross Swire's face changed and he stared at Dustless gloomily. Finally, he could understand the bitterness of Kayatsuki Subaru at that time. This guy's words were too irritating and he deserved a beating. "Sir Roswald, why did you hurt my sister?" Rem's pretty face was angry. The scar on Rem's neck deeply stimulated her. Perhaps if it weren't for Dustless, Rem would have suffocated to death at this moment. "Reason? What reason do I need?" Roswald asked indifferently and immediately said, "If I have to find a reason, it's because she hindered me, too much of a hindrance." After these words, not to mention Rem, even Dustless frowned, but there was nothing unexpected. Roswald in the original work was actually such a person. In order to resurrect his master, he could sacrifice anyone, even the closest people. Amir Rem was really nothing to him. "Roswald, I used to think that you were a pervert, but now it seems that you are not only a pervert, but also a beast in human face." Amelia also glared at him angrily. Her beautiful eyes seemed to explode with anger. When Llama heard this, he was just dumbfounded. He looked straight at Roswald with a dull expression. There were tears brewing on both sides of his eyes. Perhaps it was because he couldn't hold back. Llama finally cried out, "Bastard, you deserve to die." Rem also looked at Roswald as if looking at the Grim Reaper. Her eyes were piercing and without the slightest emotion. "You are really ignorant. You have lived for hundreds of years and you don't even understand some small truths." Focusing on Roswald, Dustless lowered his voice and said slowly, "Your so-called plan to resurrect your master is just a boring farce. She has disappeared for hundreds of years. Even if she opens her eyes again, what can she do? Do you think she will thank you? You are really ignorant." "What do you mean?" Roswald looked at Dustless with a bad face and his tone was extremely hoarse. "The reason is very simple." Dustless glanced at Roswald faintly. "Your master has disappeared for hundreds of years. Even if you resurrect her, do you think you can capture her heart? Will she thank you and devote herself to you? What a naive idea. Gratitude is not equal to love or liking. Sometimes I really think that you haven't grown up." Roswald's face changed. In fact, the Witch of Lust was not only his master, but Roswald also liked his master. "This idea is too naive. Your master has no interest in you. She is just a simple disciple. On the contrary, you hurt the people who really care about you. With all due respect, for an ancient figure who exists in history, you hurt the people who really care about you and like you. Are you mentally retarded? P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2266. Retard? Being ridiculed by Dustless like this, Roswald's face immediately changed as he twitched and scolded angrily, "Little brat, I have lived for hundreds of years, and what I have seen is more than what you eat. I have lived for nearly 1,000 years. Dustless sneered and interrupted Roswald, "In front of me, you are not even suitable to be my grandson. No, you are not even suitable to be my great-grandson. You are courting death." Unable to bear it any longer, Roswald was furious as he turned into a gust of wind and rushed over. His hands were like the claws of an eagle as he tried to crush Dustless's neck. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. It was also at this instant that a black shadow suddenly scurried in front of Dustless. Moreover, it slashed out with a backhand. So fast. Roswald's pupils suddenly shrank a few times as he realized that the incoming flash was extremely dangerous. He quickly retreated and distanced himself from Dustless and others. "Who dares to ruin my good deed?" Roswald was furious as he stared at the black shadow. "Reckless thing, even my... Your... Gut hunter, Alyssa? Why aren't you dead yet? Impossible, you should have been buried by me." The moment he saw who it was, Roswald instantly showed a dull expression. "Why, a person who should have been secretly killed by you suddenly came back to life? Is it a big blow to you? But it makes sense when you think about it. For a person with strong control like you, it is indeed difficult for you to accept the sudden resurrection of a person who should have died." Alyssa looked at Roswald with hatred, gritting her teeth as if she wanted to kill him herself. "Dustless, why are you with such a bad woman?" Amelia quickly came over and stood in front of Dustless, seemingly to protect him. "You little girl." Dustless scratched Amelia's nose in annoyance, rolled his eyes and said, "Really, do I still need your protection? Amelia, you underestimate me too much. Don't worry, Alyssa is now one of us. One of our own." Amelia looked at Dustless suspiciously. Even Rem and Lam looked at Dustless in shock. They didn't know what method he had used to tame Alyssa. Just by hearing the terrifying nickname of Gut Hunter, one would know how difficult it was to deal with her. "Dustless Cohen, this guy once tried to assassinate my big sister." Rem looked at Dustless with dissatisfaction, as if asking why he wanted to team up with a bad woman. "Not bad." Amelia nodded and frowned. "Not only that, I was almost killed by this evil woman. It's not that I'm paranoid, but this woman really isn't trustworthy. Perhaps you're taking her in, or is there some other reason?" At this point, Amelia looked at Dustless meaningfully. "Other reasons?" Dustless looked at Amelia strangely and suddenly smelled a sour smell. He asked curiously, "Why don't you say it? Or?" Amelia glanced at Alyssa with some resentment and said with dissatisfaction, "Or do you like this guy because he's pretty? Are you planning to keep a mistress?" Ah. Dustless was taken aback when he heard this and immediately smiled bitterly. It's said that a woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the sea. The saying is really true. Even a simple girl like you sometimes thinks nonsense. "Roswald, do you want to say it yourself or do you want me to say it for you?" Dustless's gaze suddenly looked at the livid Roswald and said slowly, "Come on, Tell us all the insidious things you've done and let everyone understand what kind of person you are. Insidious things? Amelia and Rem looked at each other, not understanding what Dustless was talking about. First of all, let me introduce Alyssa. She is a blood breed and a mercenary. She is the kind of assassin who will do anything as long as you pay her money. Dustless deliberately lowered his voice and looked at Lamu and Amelia meaningfully. You mean? Lamu's face changed slightly and revealed a look of realization. When I was assassinated, someone hired Alyssa? Is Lady Amelia the same? That's right. Dustless nodded slightly and silently agreed with Lamu's words. Then he slowly looked at Amelia and said softly, when I was assassinating you, Alyssa was also hired by someone. Could it be? Lamu and Amelia looked at each other. Although the two of them were sometimes very naive, it didn't mean that they were stupid, and Dustless had already made it very clear. Lord Roswald, could it be that you hired Alyssa to kill Lady Lamu and Lady Amelia? Lamu clenched her small fists tightly and her heart was in pain. Umph. Hearing this, Roswald snorted coldly, looked at Alyssa indifferently and said, It's really surprising that you continue to live in this world. I destroyed your internal organs at that time, but you can still live. Did Wuxian save you? Although Roswald ignored Lamu's question, his words were equivalent to a tacit agreement. The sisters, Ram and Rem, looked straight at Roswald. Both of their eyes were red and tears were rolling down their cheeks. Being betrayed and betrayed by the people closest to them, that kind of heart-wrenching feeling was 10,000 times worse than killing the sisters. Take back your tears. At this moment, Dustless's powerful roar resounded in the ears of the two sisters. They both looked at Dustless at the same time. It's not too late to mend the pen after the sheep is lost. You are still young and there is a brighter tomorrow in the future. There is no need to cry for a hypocrite. It's not worth it. Dustless said slowly and at the same time said coldly, Besides, I hate those traitors for the rest of my life. Roswald, don't worry, I will make you regret living in this world. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2267. Looking straight at Alice, Dustless had mixed feelings. After all, something like that had happened between him and her sister. He organized his thoughts and was about to speak when Alice suddenly pounced on him. I say, what happened to you? Dustless could not help but stare with a dumbfounded expression. At this moment, Alice was hugging him so tightly that his bones were about to break. Why did the usually gentle and shy Alice take the initiative? There must be something wrong. What happened to me? Alice pouted and retorted with dissatisfaction. Don't you know? This answer is too hurtful. Little girl. Dustless scratched Alice's nose and scolded her. You're so young and you've already learned to be jealous. This is not good. Versilia is your elder sister no matter what. Sister? Hearing Dustless's advice, Alice could only laugh bitterly and ask dejectedly, Do you think she treats me as her sister? She even snatched away the person I cherished the most. I realized that I was too weak in the past. I must constantly strive for self-improvement in the future. At this point, Alice suddenly became spirited, her eyes as bright as the stars. No, I'm asking you on behalf of Claire and the others. Why did you do that with my sister? Alice asked in dissatisfaction, her tone carrying a hint of resentment. Asking on behalf of others? Hearing this, Dustless looked at Alice with a half-smile and teased, If you were the one asking, I would be interested in answering. If it's them, forget it. If he could avoid answering the questions of those jealous people, he would try his best to avoid getting himself into trouble. Hurry up and say it. Alice said in dissatisfaction as she pinched Dustless's waist slightly. Dustless had a slight headache. Then he rolled his eyes and said, The key is that I'm too kind. Your sister's standards are too high. She won't marry anyone other than a great genius like me. So, I reluctantly let her get away with it and prevent Versilia from becoming a widow. Am I very noble? Hearing this, Alice smiled, but she quickly restrained herself. After all, this was her elder sister. Then how do you plan to take responsibility for Claire and the others? Alice suddenly changed the topic and said seriously, You know how they feel about you, don't you? A few of them? Dustless blinked and then teased, Don't tell me they don't include you? Yes. This time, Alice wasn't as shy as before. Instead, she took the initiative to approach Dustless. The two of them were so close that they could even feel each other's breathing. It was because she had been too reserved in the past and didn't know how to take the initiative. In the end, her barrier Versilia beat her to it. Thinking about it now, Alice was filled with regret. Forget it. Sometimes it's tiring to have too many girlfriends. Dustless suddenly shook his head. Why? Alice asked after being stunned for a moment. Didn't every man desire to have 3,000 female confidants? My kidneys are tired. Dustless answered with a smirk. You scoundrel. Hearing this, Alice's pretty face turned red. After rolling her eyes at Dustless, she said with a complicated expression, but it's normal to have many wives and concubines. Not to mention you, even those slightly wealthy nobles all have countless wives and lovers. Is that so? Dustless stroked his chin and then muttered to himself, then I'm so powerful but I'm still alone. Am I too restrained? You can try. Alice wasn't angry. Instead, she smiled and said, but Claire wanted me to tell you something. If you dare to mess around, she doesn't mind making you unable to be a man. Make me unable to be a man? That little girl's tone is really big. She really dares to say some things. Dustless sighed with emotion. Soon after, he sighed faintly. Everything that should be settled has been settled. It's about time to leave this world. As for the so-called Elven Sword Dance Festival, Dustless wasn't interested in participating. It was too boring. Although he won in the end and could fulfill his wish, Dustless treated it as a joke. Wishes weren't easy to fulfill. Everything had its limits. Therefore, Dustless wasn't very interested. In short, it was time to leave. But speaking of which, why are you looking for me? Dustless's gaze circled around Alice. He didn't believe that this was a coincidence. Previously, Dustless had felt that Alice was hiding nearby. He just didn't point it out. Come with me. Alice didn't pretend anymore. She pulled Dustless and left. Her expression was a little strange. Her face was bright red, as if she was embarrassed about something that was hard to talk about. Don't tell me you're working with Claire and the others to trick me? Alice? Dustless looked at Alice suspiciously. He always felt that this chick's behavior today was too abnormal. Not only did she take the initiative to hug him, but now she wanted to pull him to a private meeting. Is this still the shy Alice? Of course not. Am I that kind of person in your eyes? Alice pretended to be sad and shook her head. She immediately explained, I'll be frank with you. In fact, it was Grievous who asked me to come to you. That old witch? Dustless was relieved. Since the old witch learned medical ninjutsu, she had been chasing after Dustless. Even in her dreams, she wanted to take Dustless as her own. Let's go and see what she's up to. Anyway, that old witch is no match for me. After thinking about it, Dustless was relieved. Some things can't be solved clearly and there will be a series of troubles. It's best to solve it as soon as possible. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2268. There were some things that couldn't be avoided. Moreover, Dustless was about to leave this world. If he could solve it, he would solve it well and not leave any regrets. Lead the way. Dustless looked at Alice and followed her. In the past, they always met in Grievous' office, which was slightly different. Now they were meeting in her home, which was more luxurious than expected. After all, Grievous was the boss of Alicia Elf Academy. Old witch, what's the matter? Wuxian lay on the sofa very casually with his legs crossed. He didn't treat her as an outsider at all. Of course. Grievous pursed her lips and didn't mind. If she had Dustless's ability, perhaps she would be even more unbridled and arrogant. Dustless remained silent and looked at Grievous quietly, waiting for her to say something. Have a glass of water first. At this moment, Alice suddenly brought a glass of hot water over and passed it to Alice. Alice is still the best. Much better than a certain someone. You don't know the rules of hospitality at all. Dustless received the glass of water with a smile and finished it in one gulp. I hope you can reconsider what I said earlier. Seeing that Dustless had finished drinking the water, a strange look flashed across Grievous's eyes. It seemed that Dustless was already in her hands. She spoke with a hint of pride. So it's still this matter. Dustless shook his head and didn't feel any different. He knew that Grievous wouldn't give up so easily. Old Demoness, I'm not interested in your ambitions, so don't expect me to be in the same boat with you. Give up. Dustless was straightforward and didn't give Grievous any chance to maneuver. What if I force you to do this? Grievous stared at Dustless and said in a tone that didn't leave any room for maneuver. Force me? Dustless grinned, but it was a little bone-chilling. Then you should be prepared to be trampled on. I won't let you off easily from your body to your mind. Have you seen Celestia? That chick is now obedient to me. Do you want to be like that too? Let's not talk about other things first. How do you feel? Gruas brushed it off with a smile, not minding Dustless's threat. How do you feel? Dustless raised his brows slightly, feeling that Gruas was implying something. He asked in puzzlement, "What do you mean? This fellow?" However, Grievous opened her eyes wide as she said in shock in her heart, "Don't tell me he is fine? I know that Dustless is powerful and unfathomable, but I have also increased the dosage. Yet he is completely fine. Isn't that a little too exaggerated?" Grievous's face was filled with disbelief as she sized up Dustless as though she had seen a ghost. Is there something wrong with this old demoness? Or? Wu Chen's gaze changed slightly as he suddenly looked at Alice. His gaze was extremely cold in an instant. However, Alice was like a little girl who had done something wrong. She hurriedly lowered her head in shame. You guys worked together to trick me? Dustless's face darkened. Things had developed to this point. If he still didn't understand anything, wouldn't he be an idiot? You can't put it that way. Grievous shook her head and said sternly, we just wanted to pull you back from the crooked path. There's no such thing as a trick. In other words, you admit it? Dustless narrowed his eyes. A dangerous glint flickered in the slits of his eyes. Old woman, you are playing with fire. I saved you previously. Not only did you not thank me, but now you dare to scheme against me. Even if I kill you, it will be normal. Dustless was about to release his murderous aura when he suddenly felt dizzy. His body also inexplicably heated up. Hee. Seeing Dustless's cheeks turn red in an instant, Gruas nodded and smiled. You gave me a fright. I thought it wouldn't work on you. I thought you were immune to too many aphrodisiacs. Pfft. Hearing that, Dustless spat out all the water in his lungs. Moreover, it was extremely unfortunate that Grievous was sitting opposite him. All the water sprayed onto her body, instantly becoming a drowned rat. Ah, aphrodisiac. Alice screamed and asked in disbelief, didn't you say it was just a knockout drug? The dean only wanted to drug Dustless. This bastard. Grievous's face was ashen. Her entire body was drenched by Dustless's saliva. This was the first time someone dared to spray her with saliva. Unforgivable. If I told you it was an aphrodisiac, would you still do it according to my wishes? Grievous looked at Alice and asked indifferently. Besides, you don't have to feel embarrassed. I'm just imitating your sister's method. It's just that it's more extreme. Besides, didn't you want to get Dustless? Let's do it this way. Do it with him now. Although Dustless is a cold person, he will definitely not abandon you after what you did with him. Old witch, it seems like you know me well. Dustless sneered. Looking at Grievous, who was drenched by his saliva, for some reason, the resentment in his stomach disappeared. However, an unknown flame in his heart spurted into his head, messing up Dustless's thoughts. His thoughts weren't clear as though they were paste. Can I really do it? Alice blushed. Looking at the dizzy Dustless, she found it difficult to take action. Isn't it too despicable to take advantage of someone's perilous state? Although I hate Dustless, this guy is right about one thing. Grievous scrutinized the blushing Dustless and lamented. Bad guys live for 1,000 years while good guys don't. This guy isn't without reason. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates.